Hey, I'm Alex, and welcome to Hallucination. If you love true horror stories, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. The stories you'll hear are shared by our audience from Reddit, and to keep their original essence, I read them exactly as they were written. Before we begin, let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? Also, check the timestamps in the comments for story titles and easy navigation. Now, let's dive into the darkness. A cursed melody, a lost soul, and revenge fueled by desire. I should never gotten involved with this piano business. From the very beginning, I had a feeling something was off, but you know how it is. Sometimes people take the most dangerous paths just to fill a void without even realizing it. It's not about the music, it's about the loneliness. Maybe I just wanted to drown out the echoing silence in my home. I've been living alone for 3 years. No visitors, nowhere to visit. The only human contact I have is the cold, polite greetings exchanged at work. I'm a teacher, a music teacher. Throughout my life, melodies have been my most loyal companions. But lately, strangely enough, nothing I played seemed to bring me any joy. It felt like even the sounds were avoiding me, hiding beneath the keys. That's why I decided to buy a piano, one I could play freely in my own home, even in the late hours of the night. But I had no money, or rather my salary was barely enough to entertain the thought of buying new furniture. I spent days scrolling through online listings. The prices, insane. Even the lowest quality pianos with yellowed keys and scratched bodies were double my budget. Despair was becoming a habit when suddenly that listing appeared. Polished wood, elegantly carved legs, like something straight out of the Baroque era. Despite its elegance, the price was unbelievably low. $50. I rubbed my eyes, checked the date, refreshed the page. Still there, still $50. I looked at the photos over and over again, taken from every angle, the inside, the outside, the keys, the finish. Everything was extraordinary. It felt like a bad joke, yet something inside me kept whispering that something was wrong. Still, I messaged the seller. My fingers were trembling as I typed. How strange. It was just a piano, but I felt as uneasy as if I were ordering a gravestone. The man replied quickly, "If you cover the transport cost, I can send it right away," he said. I agreed. He sounded confident, but something was off. His messages were short, rushed. He didn't say anything unnecessary. He gave me the address. That was it. On the day of delivery, I arrived to find him in the middle of moving out. The door creaked open and I saw boxes, half-empty shelves, stacks of books. He was definitely moving, but he didn't have that look of relief people usually wear when they leave a place behind. It felt like he wasn't leaving a house, but escaping a memory. As we talked and I approached the piano, I couldn't hold back. "You're selling it for so cheap. There's nothing wrong with it, is there?" I asked, my voice trembling a little. Our eyes met, sweat beaded on his forehead, and he didn't answer right away. He cleared his throat. "Him moving. It won't fit," he said. But something was missing in his voice. The words didn't come from deep within, they were just lip service. A script. As the piano was loaded onto the truck and carried down the narrow apartment stairs, it paused so many times I lost count, but I just stood there watching. Even then, the strange feeling inside me stirred. I thought, why doesn't this piano feel like it belongs to me yet? When it arrived in my place, I placed it in the corner of the living room. The afternoon light filtered through the window and hit the keys, and the entire room lost its silence in an instant. It felt as though something invisible had entered, thickening the air. I sat before it, reached out and played. The first note, it didn't just vibrate the strings, it vibrated something inside me. As I played that first melody, something loosened within. It wasn't my fingers playing, it was the rusted memories of my childhood. A strange peace filled my chest but curled within. That peace was a thread of unease. The piano sound was extraordinary, soft yet deep, old yet flawless. The tone felt familiar, like a stranger you instantly trust. I played for minutes on end. My hands got used to it. The melodies flowed. Time seemed to bend. When I finally looked up, it was past midnight. My fingers were numb, but the emptiness inside me felt a little less hollow. I gently closed the lid, leaned in and whispered, "We're not done yet, you and I." I headed to bed. The house sank into silence. But that night it wasn't true silence. The walls seemed to breathe, the dim light of the lamps flickered, The curtains swayed gently, though the windows were closed. "You're just adjusting," I told myself. "A new object, a new sound. Your brain is tricking you." But my heart didn't believe it. I fell asleep with difficulty, and every time I drifted deeper, I awoke again, as if someone were counting my breaths. And then that sound. A high-pitched, trembling note from the piano, then another, and then a chord. My eyes opened. I sat up, a lump in my throat. At that moment I realized I wasn't alone in the house. I got out of bed in the dark. My feet crept across the wooden floor as the house watched in breathless silence. I stopped at the living room doorway. There on the piano was my cat. Her white fur glowed like a pale ghost in the moonlight. She was pressing the keys with her front paws. Random, unintentional. I let out a deep breath, caught between relief and irritation. "You again?" "Scared me half to death," I whispered. She turned to look at me, but her gaze was strange. It lasted too long, as if she were trying to say something. I picked her up, just as I was turning to leave. The piano's lid slammed shut with violent force. The sound echoed through the room, and the strings resonated with a haunting tone, like the sob of a graceful woman. I couldn't sleep that night. My cat's gaze wouldn't leave my mind, and the sound from the piano, it hadn't been random. There was a pattern in the notes, as if something was being told. A story, a sentence, or a call. By morning, my eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. I looked at myself in the mirror, exhausted yet oddly eager to sit at the piano again. I made my coffee, opened the curtains, and sat down. I dusted it off, placed my hands on the keys. I began playing. Slowly, I played the first melody again, then something else, something I'd never played before. The melody wasn't in my mind, but somehow my hands knew it. And then, something whispered from beneath the keys. Maybe it was just the wind, maybe the creaking of old wood, but a voice inside me rose. "You didn't choose this piano, it chose you." The next day, after work, my feet carried me straight to the piano, as if nothing else I did that day mattered. As if my very existence continued there between the keys, within its frame in that strange silence. Before playing, I decided to clean it a bit, just for peace of mind. Maybe I could understand why the lid slammed shut that night. Maybe a spring was loose. Maybe the old wood couldn't hold itself up anymore. I needed to believe something rational, not out of fear. At least that's what I told myself, but for sanity's sake. I grabbed my tools and gently opened the lid. Inside, it was like a forgotten tomb, once filled with music. The strings looked like cobwebs. The wooden body had surrendered to moisture, but what struck me most was the smell. A faint scent of burnt metal, but older. Not mold, not dust. More like the scent of something waiting, patiently, silently. As I wiped the inside, something shimmered, just a glint at first. I thought it was a staple, but as I looked closer, I realized it was paper, wedged into the piano's inner frame. I pulled it out with trembling fingers. Yellowed, crumpled paper. A melody was handwritten on it, very old notation, like a code. But the strange thing, there was a note scrawled along the edge, faded but still legible. "When this melody is completed, it will complete you, or completely end you." A tingling started in my gut. Logic said, "Leave it. Tear it up. You don't have to play it." But curiosity is the easiest way to lose your mind, especially when something unexplained is involved. I looked at the score, then at the piano, then back at the paper. Eventually, I gave in. I sat down, and I played. The first key rang out with a strange resonance. Its sound lasted just a bit too long. I felt like something else in the house had answered it. The walls maybe, or the heart of the house. The second note was deeper. I thought I saw a shadow stir in the corner of the room. Third, fourth, a melody began to take shape. Strange, unsettling, but captivating. It pierced me. The tones echoed inside my head. With each note, it felt like something was peeling away within me. Midway through, my hands started trembling. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something in the living room. Someone standing, watching me. But when I turned, nothing. I faced the piano again. The notes weren't in my mind anymore. They were in my hands, playing on their own. And then I got tired. I don't know why. Maybe the unsettling tone wore me down. I wanted to switch to another piece. At that moment, the piano lid slammed shut on my hands. A sharp crack. One of my nails split, I tried to pull back, but for a moment it felt like the piano didn't want to let go. Instinctively, I stood. The stool fell back. My left hand throbbed. I stared at the piano. Silent. Just dust. And that cursed melody echoing in my mind. Inside, I felt something strange. As if I hadn't played it, something had pulled it out of me. And in that moment, I understood. This piano was not made to be played. This piano was made to listen. The next night, I sat still for a long time, staring at the piano. My fingerprints were still visible on the keys. It stood there as if nothing had happened the night before, as if it had all just been a bad dream. But even dreams have an end. This didn't. That melody still echoed inside me. That incomplete, unsettling, imprisoning melody. It kept looping in my mind. I had to play to silence my thoughts, as if it wasn't just music, but the key to breaking a curse, as if finishing it would set me free. I hesitated for a while, but eventually I gave in and sat at it again. My fingers touched the keys gently at first, then faster, more passionately. The notes didn't seem to come from within me, but rather into me from somewhere else. It wasn't up to me. My hands weren't mine anymore. They had already made the decision. The melody no longer felt familiar. It wasn't playing from the sheet anymore. The notes were being born on their own. My body had become an instrument of the piano's will. My eyes welled up, but I didn't cry. It was more like a drowning sensation. The keys hurt my nails, but I couldn't stop. My hands felt glued to them, literally glued. The more I tried to pull them away, the harder they pressed. Suddenly the bench trembled. No, it moved. Not backwards, but forwards, towards the piano. It was pulling me in. I wanted to get up, but it was impossible. My hands were magnetically stuck. My knees buckled, but the bench remained still. My legs were shaking, but my hands pressed even harder on the keys. The sounds I produced were no longer music, but screams. Strange, piercing, the scream of something alive. Then I felt a sharp pain in my left thumb. A jolt of pain shot through my brain. My eye felt like it would pop out. My nail had come off. All the nail beds were red. Blood was seeping between the keys. I wanted to scream. I couldn't. My mouth wouldn't open. My tongue felt like it had been shoved back, like a fist lodged in my throat. I couldn't breathe, but I kept playing. My fingers trembled rhythmically over the keys, ignoring me, my body, my mind. I lost all sense of time. I don't know how many hours passed. I just remember darkness falling before my eyes. My connection to my body slowly faded. I was becoming the sound of the piano. Or maybe the sound itself was consuming me. And then, suddenly, the bench pushed me back. I was thrown violently. My hands were freed. My palms burned. My breathing slowly returned to normal. But I heard a sound. A whisper. Not from nearby. From within. You must feel it. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My fingers were bandaged, but they were still trembling. I stared into my eyes in the bathroom mirror for a long time. My eyes felt like they belonged to someone else. I was still me, but something else, something foreign, was inside. As if a piece of the piano had broken off and slipped into me. 3 in the morning. My eyelids grew heavy. I couldn't resist and collapsed onto the couch. As soon as I fell asleep, it began again. I was in a truck. The far wall was rusted. Chains hung from the ceiling. I was being held by my ankles. Both of them. The same 2 men who had once moved the piano. They had no faces. In place of faces were piano keys. The keys moved up and down, laughing it seemed. One grabbed my wrist, the other my arm. They dragged me toward the piano in the back. The same piano, exactly the same. Blood-stained, cracked, my fingerprints still on it. No, I tried to scream. It only echoed inside me. The lid opened on its own. The cursed melody I had once played poured out again, but this time the notes were reversed, as if someone had turned them inside out. The sound, it resembled a human voice, but not one that came from a mouth, from something without a mouth. The truck started moving. I jolted. They pushed me toward the piano. I couldn't resist. My hands touched the keys again. And again, I had to play. I woke up abruptly, eyes wide, throat dry, drenched in sweat. I got up. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and called 2 people. Take this cursed thing out of my house. I don't care where you take it. Just let me never see it again. They came. One was young, the other in his 50s. "Don't give it to anyone," I said. "Burn it, bury it, destroy it." The young one smiled and shook my hand. "As long as you pay, brother, we can dump it or donate it." They loaded it into the truck. The back door slammed shut. They left. That night I thought I slept peacefully, but true peace had been erased from my vocabulary. In my dream, I was there again. The same truck, the same chains. But this time, I was the one being loaded into the back, and where it was going. No one knew. Life, somehow, continued. It had to. I took long walks to clear my head. I didn't speak to anyone. I couldn't explain this to anyone who would believe me. If I said I played the piano and my hands wouldn't let go, they'd laugh. If I said my fingers moved on their own, they'd tell me to take my meds and lie down. So I stayed silent, swallowed it all. I buried the fear deep in my eyes, so it would never come out again. Months passed. Slowly I started to recover. My fingers regained their flexibility. I began giving private lessons, teaching children basic notes. As long as I could control the sounds, I could control the fear. One day, through an old acquaintance, I was offered a music teaching job at a public school. I accepted. Maybe for the first time, I would do something normal. The school was a 2-story, worn-out building a bit outside the city. When I entered, a crumbling corridor greeted me. But what really mattered to me was the music room. The vice principal handed me the key. "It's a bit messy inside, but it'll shape up," he said. I opened the door. The room was dim, curtains drawn. The air was heavy. In the center, something covered in a white sheet stood. I thought it was a table at first, but as I got closer, the shape became familiar. A strange excitement crept over me. I tried to suppress it. I grabbed the sheet, lifted it slowly. A cloud of dust rose into the air. And at that moment, my heart clenched like a fist in my chest. It was that piano, that cursed hell-spawn piano. The same scratches, the yellowed marks on the keys, the crack on the upper left corner. It was the same. The piano that once took my fingers, then my mind, then nearly my life. I backed away. My breath caught. But inside me a voice, a very old one, whispered, "Maybe this time it'll listen to you." I stepped forward again, touched the keys. A sharp high note rang out, like a child whispering, just as I was about to pull away. The white sheet in my hand came to life, as if someone grabbed it. It wrapped around my neck, started to squeeze. My throat clenched. I couldn't breathe. My knees gave out. Right then, the door opened. The principal. His eyes widened and he rushed toward me. The sheet was still around my neck, but loosening. I collapsed to the ground. I tried to speak, but my tongue wouldn't move. The principal, voice trembling, said he did it himself, like he was wrapping it around like crazy. Then came the ambulance. Then IV fluids. Then a week in a psychiatric hospital. Diagnosis: crisis-induced temporary dissociative hallucination. That's all. That's all, apparently, if you believe it. When I got out of the mental hospital, the weather was cold, but I didn't feel cold. It was as if I had forgotten how to be cold. Besides, I could no longer tell the difference between feeling something and not feeling anything. There was only one thing inside me, the desire to end it. I had to finish it. If I didn't close this book, that piano would eventually either drive me insane or kill me. There was something inside it. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't even music. It was a presence. Something with emotions, desires, a will of its own. A will infused into the piano's wood, its string system, maybe even a long-hidden fragment buried inside. And I had met that will. I hadn't seen its face, but I had felt its fingers. It had passed through me. When school was out, I returned. I didn't tell anyone. I waited for the sounds of students leaving, seeping between the doors. They left. The principal, the janitor, the guard, all gone. As night fully descended, I slipped inside. I brought 3 things with me: a bottle of gasoline, a cigarette, and a lighter. When I entered the music room, my eyes looked for that white cloth again, but this time it wasn't there. The piano was there, standing like a coffin. My footsteps echoed. I circled around it, poured the gasoline gently on its wooden surface between the keys beneath the pedals. I lit my cigarette. That tiny spark would either save me or dig my grave. I took a drag and flicked the butt. The flames were cautious at first, then they spread everywhere. A soft crackling began in the room, just like the primitive creaks that came when playing the piano. A voice inside me said, "It's over." But at that moment, I felt a drop of coolness fall from the ceiling. Sprinklers. It was as if the school's nervous system refused to let itself die. Water poured. The fire died. And I just watched. Only watched. I approached the piano. It had burned, but it was alive. Like a monster. Wounded but furious. The next morning, the principal didn't even look at me. I didn't look at him either. That evening, I found an old rusty axe in the schoolyard. I wasn't going to speak to it anymore. I wouldn't play it. Wouldn't listen. This time, I would strike its body. I entered the room, locked the door, and started swinging. With each blow, the wood cracked. With every crack, I thought I heard a scream. Was it real? I don't know. But when I stopped hearing the pieces it used to play, when I saw its shattered body, I knew. It was just wood now. I was exhausted, but for the first time there was real silence inside me. A hum in my ears, but nothing in my soul. Zero. Finally, zero. I went home, while struggling with insomnia. The idea of buying another piano came to me, but this time it would be something proper. Not cursed. Beautiful. Clean. I opened the internet, and at that moment, the entire screen froze. An ad popped up. Something that shouldn't have appeared. Not within my filters. Not in my budget. Not from outside my city. The exact same photo. The same piano. $50. Same address. Every muscle in my body froze. It was like someone was pressing on my shoulder. But there was still one spark left inside me. This time I would ask, without fear. I messaged the seller. Pretended to be a new buyer. Got the address. This time I brought something with me. My grandfather's old war pistol. I knocked on the door. The man who opened it wasn't familiar, but his face wore a strange expression. Not smiling, not threatening, as if he already knew everything. "Come in," he said. And I entered for answers. And maybe one last nightmare. The moment I stepped inside, the house was nearly dark. The curtains were drawn. No air flowed. It didn't feel like a home. More like an abandoned stage. Everything felt ready and waiting. The man who had let me in walked ahead. As I looked at his back, something inside me stirred, an unnamed familiarity, and yet terrifying. I couldn't clearly see his face, he never fully turned. He sat on one of the couches. I remained standing. My gun was in my hand, but in that scene I didn't seem like the one holding the weapon. It was him, in his eyes, his silence, in this strange atmosphere. Then he spoke. "You played it too, didn't you?" "What?" I said. It wasn't a question. It was a scream. The notes. That sheet. Every hand that plays it leaves a trace, and each trace calls to the next. My breathing grew erratic. You gave it to me. You knew what it was." The man squinted at me. Now there was an expression on his face. Wariness. But older than death itself. "I didn't give it to you," he said. "It chose you." "Who?" "The pianist." I froze. This had to be a joke. But inside me, that deep voice quietly agreed. Who is the pianist? He was once someone like me. His hands bled. His nails tore off. His sleep was shattered. Something seeped into his soul and swallowed him. But the worst part, one day, the music stopped. So he sought other hands. Wrote down the notes. Found someone to play. And with each new player, a piece of him returned. Until he was fully awake. My throat dried. A bitter taste in my mouth. As if all the truths were rising like blood in my throat. Did you play that piece too? The man lowered his head. I did. I couldn't finish it. I ran. But he didn't forgive me, and I know he won't forgive you either. I pointed my gun. Not from fear anymore. I was afraid of losing my mind. Afraid of walking that line. Just tell me the truth. That piano, what is it? What does it want from me? Your voice, he said. Your voice. The pure feeling at the tips of your fingers. It doesn't just want to be played. It wants to live. My head spun. The walls were closing in. I had to sit. That melody, it started playing again in my ears. But this time, I realized the melody wasn't mine, but it played from within me. How do I stop it? It doesn't stop, but you can. If you don't accept it, if you don't live with it, maybe you'll just forget. Maybe after years it'll feel like just a nightmare, but you'll always stay alert. It'll always watch, just like now. He turned his eyes to the window. So did I. The curtains slowly opened on their own. And outside, on the corner of the street, a truck was parked. The same truck. The one that brought the piano. The one that took it away. The one from my dream. There was no one visible in the driver's seat, but the engine was running. Smoke was rising. Then something hit me. I've been here before, haven't I? The man smiled. One of those fatal smiles, like the mouth of a grave. You have, a long time ago, and you asked back then too, and you didn't believe. Then you pretended to forget, but it doesn't forget. I stood up. There was only one thing left, escape. Maybe running wasn't salvation, but forgetting might be a chance. I headed for the door, but before I left, I turned one last time. What's your name? I have no name anymore, he said. I'm just the bearer of the sound. And I left. When I stepped into the street, the truck's headlights turned on, but it didn't move. It just sat there, like a memory. Forgotten, but never erased. Since that day, I never played the piano again. Never touched a note. But that melody still echoes in my ears. When the night gets quiet, sometimes I hear a piano from the other end of the house. I don't get up, because I know I'm not the one playing, but someone is. And with every note, they're getting closer. Someone sent me a live location that's getting closer. I live on the East Coast, small town, nothing special. My parents were out of town visiting family, and I had the place to myself for the weekend. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wasn't texting anyone. Just winding down, watching YouTube on the couch, blanket half over me, lights off except for the kitchen and the soft glow of the TV. It was just after midnight, and I was alone in the house. That's when I got the first text. Montana. It came in as an iMessage, blue bubble, from a number I didn't recognize. Area code 406. I tapped it. The preview of the pin briefly looked familiar. No message, just a pin attachment. I don't know a single person from Montana. I don't even know anyone who's been there. I've lived on the East Coast my entire life, and there's no overlap between my contacts and anything out west. The map opened to my house, my actual house. Every part of me went cold. My stomach flipped. I sat up a little straighter, holding the phone tighter. I didn't know what to make of it. Was it a mistake? A weird glitch? A wrong number? I didn't move for a while. Just stared at the screen, waiting for another message or some kind of explanation. Nothing came. I texted back. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Who is this? I stayed frozen. I thought maybe it was a scammer, but no links, no follow-up. Just my exact house as a dropped pin, sent deliberately. My stomach dropped. I backed away from the window instinctively. You always sit in the same spot. Then I got another message. At 12:14 a.m. another iMessage came through. This one wasn't a dropped pin. It was a live location share through the Find My app. Not just a static point, a constantly updating dot that tracked them in real time. Wherever they went, I could see it. The starting point was about an hour away. It looked like a country road near a highway exit I didn't recognize. The dot was moving, fast. Whoever it was, they were driving. The dot kept moving steadily. It was still on a highway an hour out, a direct line straight toward my county. The realization hit hard, like ice water down my back. This wasn't some random drive. Whoever this was, they were coming directly to me. I froze. My first instinct was to close the app, but I couldn't. My hands felt glued to the phone. My chest tightened as I watched the dot crawling closer, taking the highway exit that fed straight into my town. Panic kicked in. I stood up too fast and stumbled, almost dropping the phone. My mind raced with everything I hadn't done. Doors, windows, lights. I snapped into motion. I ran upstairs, locking the window in my room even though I never opened it. Then the bathroom window. I came back down, grabbed the landline phone we still keep in the kitchen, and checked to make sure it had a signal. Then I moved through the house quickly, locking the front door even though I was pretty sure I had already. Then I went to the back and turned the deadbolt. Then checked the side door to the garage. I flicked off every light as I went. Kitchen, hallway, living room, everything dark. I returned upstairs and shut the door to my bedroom, locking it behind me. I crouched low below the window and stayed there, holding my phone with both hands. I reverse searched the number online. For some odd reason, it hadn't occurred to me to do it after the first pin. Nothing. No name. No carrier ID. The websites that normally return at least a state or spam risk came back blank. One of them just said no available data. I tried copying the number into Facebook. Nothing. Instagram, Snapchat, nothing. The dot was about 45 minutes out now. I called one of my friends again and left a message this time, voice shaking. Told them I was getting a live location from a random Montana number and the sender had sent my house as a pin first. Then it turned into a live location through the Find My app. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. The details were too specific, too direct. No context. No scam links. Just the pin. Then the line. You always sit in the same spot. Then a moving location. I sat on the floor behind the couch, keeping low. Every light in the house was off now, except for the lamp in the upstairs hallway. I checked the front door again. Still locked. Back door. Locked. Windows. Closed. No lights outside except the small porch lamp and the motion light over the garage. Still no reply. My neighbors were all asleep. One of them works early shifts and their lights were already off at 10. The other house hadn't had a single light on all evening. The entire block was dead quiet. The dot was still moving. Now 35 minutes out. I couldn't stop checking it. I kept switching apps, refreshing, going back, over and over again. I called the police, told them someone from out of state had sent me my exact location and was now sharing a live location that was moving toward me. They asked if I knew the person. I said no. They asked if I was in immediate danger. I said I didn't know. They said they would send a cruiser to do a drive-by in a bit, but not to call 911 unless someone actually showed up. The line went dead after that. I sat in my bedroom on the floor beneath the window, hiding just under the sill out of instinct. I didn't think I would see anything, but I couldn't stop myself from checking. I wanted to be near the window. I needed to know if someone was really coming. Legs crossed, phone in both hands, eyes glued to the screen. Every time I glanced back at the dot, still crawling closer, I felt a cold throb in my chest. I imagined every bump I heard as a knock. Every gust of wind as movement. I kept picturing someone walking around the house with their phone in their hand, sending things to me without saying a word. I mustered up the courage to call the number and see what's going on, or give them a piece of my mind for scaring me like this. No response. At 1:03 a.m., another message came through. You always sit in the same spot. The location was 25 minutes away, then 20. Were they really coming towards my house? I started to deny it. There is no way they are. And even if so, what would they do? I don't even know this person. My throat felt dry. I turned off the hallway lamp from earlier and curled into the corner between the nightstand and the wall. My phone lit up my face, but I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to watch that dot. I had to know. My legs were stiff from not moving. I stayed quiet. I don't know why. It felt wrong to even shift around too much. I kept glancing at the door to my bedroom like something might come through it. Time started to stretch. I was staring at the screen, barely blinking. I lost track of how long I stared at it, watching it slowly eat up the distance. I wasn't sure if the police had actually come. I didn't hear a siren, no knock, no headlights outside. I didn't even know if they could find someone from just a number and a moving dot. The dot crept through the center of town, then 15 minutes out, then 12, then 9. It passed the gas station, then the local grocery store. It took the same route I would take to get home. At 1:39 a.m., the dot turned onto my street. Then it stopped. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I grabbed my phone and fumbled through the lock screen trying to redial the police. My hands were shaking so badly I hit the wrong buttons twice. It sat at the edge of the block for a full minute, just paused there. I was holding my breath. Then it moved again, right past the first house, then the second, then it stopped again, in front of mine, right across. My phone buzzed. One more message. I crawled over to the window slowly. just enough to peek beneath the blinds without pressing my face up. A pair of headlights was sitting silently at the curb. You see me now, taken from the street, my house, lights off, curtains drawn. The picture was angled upward, directly at my bedroom window. Then came the photo. I haven't moved. The car door just opened. The games I used to play. When I was a kid, I used to play these games to scare myself. I know it's weird, but I was a bit of a loner growing up and I needed some way to entertain myself while my mom was working her overnights at the hospital. I was actually incredibly brave as a child. It's funny how time changes a person. It wasn't until I moved in with my fiancé that the memories of my childhood games came back to me. Our new house was perfect, a 2-story fixer-upper with a basement in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. We had been moved in for about a week and were sorting out some boxes in the basement when Adrienne noticed the time. "You promised we'd be in bed by midnight." I checked my watch. It was nearing 1 in the morning. We had been unpacking for nearly 4 straight hours. The unfinished basement was dimly lit by a singular fluorescent bulb, one of those ones that is attached to a pull chain. The hopper window in the back was covered with a thick bush that I hadn't gotten around to trimming down yet, so time had completely slipped away. "Yeah, you're right. Not sure why we're organizing Christmas stuff. We won't need it for months. Let's get to bed and pick this up in the morning." I went to head up the stairs, but was stopped when Adrienne grabbed my hand. "Hey, don't you dare leave me here. This basement creeps me out." I chuckled as I scanned our basement's mostly vacant walls. Unimpressive, certainly, but I didn't think anything about it was explicitly creepy. I should have known better. Adrienne is the type of person to look away from a movie at the first hint of blood. I love her with all my heart, but she is possibly the biggest scaredy cat that I know. "All right, go on up. I'll get the light." I let Adrienne get halfway up the stairs before I pulled the chain on the bulb, leaving me in near total darkness. At that moment, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. Alone in the shadow-filled basement, I was transported back in time to one of my favorite childhood games. I smiled to myself as the repressed memory bubbled up. I would play the game one last time. I loitered in the basement casually and confidently. I knew not to turn around. I knew exactly how to play from when I was a child. It was like riding a bike. I felt the monster behind me getting closer. My instincts told me to run, but that would be cheating. The way to win the game was by waiting until the very last possible moment before fleeing and bursting out of the basement door into the light of the kitchen. I must have played this particular game at least 100 times when I was a child. I always won. It wasn't about knowing what step to start running, it was about feeling the fear and adrenaline. That was the only way to know for certain how close the monster was. My fully grown body caused the wooden steps to creak in a way that I had never had to account for before. Would this change the game? When I was about halfway up the stairs, I knew the monster was close. My heart rate quickened and I wanted to run. My smile widened as I experienced the same fear and adrenaline that had powered me as a child. Don't turn around. Don't run. Not yet. One more step. My body went into motion faster than my brain had time to register. I sprinted up the remainder of the stairs and slammed the basement door behind me out of pure instinct. I smiled at Adrienne, who stared at me with wide eyes. Once again, I beat the monster. "What was that?" Adrienne asked quickly. She raced for her phone and I stared at her, confused. "I didn't mean to scare you. It was just a game that I used to play when I was a kid. I would turn off the basement lights and walk up the stairs until the very last moment. Then I would run." What Adrienne said next will forever be etched into my memory as one of the most haunting things that I had ever heard. Then why did I hear 2 pairs of footsteps? The strangers who left no footprints. I thought the house was normal, at least at first. It was an old farmhouse, the kind you don't think twice about, the kind you expect to find tucked away in the country, with tall grass in the yard and a faded mailbox at the end of a long winding road. I didn't expect anything to happen. I just needed a change of scenery, somewhere isolated, somewhere quiet. The first night I stayed there, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling like something was wrong. You know that feeling, right? Like you're being watched, even though no one is there. I checked the windows, double-locked the door, and eventually went back to sleep. When I woke up again in the morning, there were footprints. They weren't mine. I live alone. No one had been there. But there they were. In the dust of the hallway, a trail leading from the front door to the kitchen, the dirt from outside still clung to them. I tried to rationalize it, thought maybe I had left the door open by accident, maybe an animal had wandered in. But no, these weren't animal prints. They were human. Big, wide footsteps, as if whoever had walked through that door didn't care about making noise. The footsteps were like normal ones, though. They didn't leave the usual shape of a heel or toes. They were almost too perfect, round and smooth, as though they were made by something unnatural. I followed the prints. They led into the kitchen and then stopped, right in the middle of the floor. Now I know what you're thinking. Maybe I'm just paranoid. Maybe it was all in my head. But that feeling, that prickling sensation at the back of my neck, it never left. I checked the house thoroughly. Every room, every corner. Nothing seemed off, except for the prints. A few days passed. I started to get comfortable, but then it happened again. More footprints. This time, they weren't just in the house. They were outside too. I found them on the porch, then on the steps leading down to the garden, and they weren't just footprints anymore. Now there were marks, long, drag-like streaks, as if something had been dragged through the dirt. I tried to tell myself I was just losing it. Maybe someone else had come by in the middle of the night, played a prank, but it didn't make sense. Nobody lived around here. The nearest neighbor was miles away. I began to notice something else too. The house wasn't silent anymore. It never had been quiet really, but now there was always a soft whispering. It wasn't loud enough to make out words, but it was there, floating just beyond my hearing. If I sat still long enough, I could hear it, in the walls, in the floors, underneath the floorboards. And then one night it changed. I woke up to the sound of breathing. It was soft, almost like a sigh, but too close. I turned, expecting to see the door ajar or a window cracked, but nothing. The room was still. The air, however, was thick, like it was holding its breath. And that's when I noticed it, the footprints inside the room. They weren't on the floor though, they were on the ceiling. The marks were there, stretching across the plaster, as if someone had walked across the ceiling in the dark, and they were moving, slowly. I didn't know what to do. I tried to leave. I grabbed my things, shoved them into a bag, but when I went to the door, it wouldn't open. The knob turned, but the door was locked. From the inside. And that's when I heard it, clearer than ever before. The whisper, but this time it wasn't far off. It was right behind me. I turned around and I saw them. There were 3 figures standing at the foot of the bed. I couldn't make out their faces, but I could see their outlines. Tall, thin, their bodies too thin, like they hadn't been made to exist in the way humans are. Their shadows stretched across the room, twisting like the tips of dark branches. They were moving, but I could feel them. I could feel them in my chest, in my bones. They were waiting. They never made a sound. No breathing, no footsteps. But I felt their eyes on me, felt their presence as if they were pulling the life from me, little by little. And then they moved. They moved in a way that shouldn't have been possible, as if they weren't walking, but sliding, gliding, like they were flowing along the walls, like they had no form, only shadow. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. They didn't need to touch me. They didn't need to make a sound. They just took my name, took my voice, took my memory. When I woke up again, it was daylight. The house was still quiet, but the footprints were gone. Everything was gone. I left that house. I don't know if it was real. I don't know if it was a dream or something else. But I know this. I never told anyone about it. Not because I'm scared they won't believe me, but because I don't want them to know. I'm afraid they'll come for them too. And maybe they already have. My backyard neighbors have no windows. I moved into my first house when I was 25 5 years ago now. It was a big step, owning a house, all on my own. I bought it from my great aunt, who'd lived here for as long as I could remember with her late husband. They were quiet people, kept to themselves mostly, and I didn't think much of it when she sold me the house. The neighborhood is the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. People talk, share stories, and stop to chat while walking their dogs. The houses are older and packed tightly together. There's a comfortable rhythm to life here, quiet, familiar, but every so often, something about it all would feel off, like the background hum of a machine you didn't realize was there until it stopped. You'd hear the neighbors' kids playing or laughter from a window but never see who was laughing, just echoes without a source. But there was always something about my backyard neighbor's house that bothered me. Not much at first, just little things that didn't seem to line up. Their house was the first on the block, with no fence around it at all, no privacy, no separation, just open lawn stretching into mine. Instead, they had a small deck, just high enough that it seemed like they could see across several yards. From where it sat, it gave the impression that they could quietly observe much of the neighborhood. I told myself it was just the layout, an old home, a strange elevation, but it always made me feel exposed. The couple that lived there always seemed to be home. Their car never left the driveway. I never saw them out walking, or carrying groceries, or talking to neighbors. The lights were off, even during the day. It was quiet, too quiet. Still, nothing felt explicitly wrong. Just still, like a room that had been waiting too long for someone to enter. A year passed. I got comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. But even then, there were moments, little flickers, where things didn't seem right. Streetlights that flickered in perfect sync. A breeze that always blew in the same direction. And what I thought was a train horn came at the exact same time, every night. But I never saw a train. The way some homes never turn their lights off. The way certain neighbors always seemed to be watching but never waving. It was the kind of place where smiles felt slightly delayed, like they rehearsed them the night before. The couple behind me came over once, toward the end of my second year. It caught me off guard. The husband and wife were friendly, pleasant even, smiling just the right amount. They asked if I ever noticed their mailbox getting full. If it does, they said, just bring it to the door. We're not always able to check it. The request lingered in my head. They were always home, weren't they? Why couldn't they get their own mail? Still, I said yes. I wanted to be polite, but the request stuck with me like a splinter under the skin. Around that time, I started dating more. Over the years, I had a handful of girlfriends, met them in different ways. One through church, one through school, one was a friend of a friend from out of town. All of them were kind, smart, beautiful in their own ways. At first, they all seemed perfectly normal. But whenever they spent time at my house, something always felt different. I used to think the house just weirded people out, that maybe the place held an energy that unsettled them. But now I'm not so sure. They all did small things. One wanted to go for walks late at night through the neighborhood, called it night watching. She said it helped her sleep. Another played old, obscure music that never quite followed a rhythm. One cooked strange meals with bitter herbs and thick broths, calling them family traditions. The food was always specific, like it had a purpose I wasn't meant to question. They all left behind little things. A photograph I could sworn was from one of my great-uncle's old memoirs, tucked beneath a couch cushion. A picture of my grandfather long before I was born, shaking hands with a man whose face I didn't recognize, but who seemed vaguely familiar. Once I found an old family heirloom I remembered seeing on my grandmother's mantle as a child, an odd, almost totemic statue made of wood and metal, set carefully on my nightstand without explanation. Nothing overtly sinister, but each item made me pause, like I had forgotten something important. My family life, too, has always carried a weight I didn't fully understand. We were raised Roman Catholic. Every Sunday we went to Mass as a family, and afterward we'd all gather at my grandparents' house for breakfast. It was always the same menu, always the same timing. Eggs, pastries, espresso in tiny white cups. Sometimes it felt more like a performance than a routine, each of us playing our parts on cue. But something always stood out to me. My uncles, aunts, cousins, they never came to church with us. They'd show up at the house after, always claiming they'd gone to a different service at another church in town. I never questioned it too deeply. It was just one of those things. When I was a kid, people said weird things about our neighborhood, local folklore, that it had no graveyard, that people disappeared sometimes, that there were too many secrets, that the stars looked different here, like they never moved. Some nights I swore the sky itself flickered, just for a second, like a light behind a curtain. Strange things happened here, always just subtle enough to be forgotten, dismissed. When I was 9, my grandfather died. My parents said he had been struggling, but they never gave a reason. Just silence, and a funeral that felt oddly formal. The priest wasn't from our parish. The service felt different. 2 of my cousins, close to me growing up, disappeared around my second year here. No one ever talked about it, just silence, like they'd never existed. Why didn't my parents warn me about the strange things in our family? Why did my brother and sister leave town and never come back? When they called, they'd say things were better for them, brighter, even that they could breathe easier. I contemplated moving, but then an uncle of mine, one I hadn't seen much of before, offered me a position at his cleaning company in town. It was a good offer, almost too good, a chance to use my accounting degree, a step into something stable, something that carried the family name. Everyone around me said it made sense, like they'd been waiting for me to take it. It felt right at the time, like destiny, or like a story written long before I read it. But now I wonder, was it a way to keep me here? Even before the job offer, I'd sometimes have the oddest feeling walking down my street, like I was inside a loop, like someone or something was resetting the stage every night while I slept. Around that time, the neighborhood felt different, heavier somehow. The couple behind me had gone quiet, not that they were loud before, but now it was as if they weren't there at all. The mail piled up again. Remembering my promise, I walked it to their back door. That's when I noticed the well. It was year 4 when everything shifted. It started with the ground. A patch of lawn I'd never paid much attention to, suddenly yellowed, sinking just slightly. My cat had always scratched at that area, usually in the middle of the night. One of my most recent girlfriends had a dog that reacted the same way, circling it, growling low, refusing to step on it. I thought it was just a drainage issue. But over the next few days, the soil seemed to peel away on its own, as if something beneath it had begun to breathe. I thought it was just a patch of disturbed earth, but over a few days, with the ground soft from thawing, the soil began to fall away, revealing the edge of something circular and solid. I brushed away the last layer myself. It was a round concrete structure, an old well, its edge ringed with soot, the center hollowed out and broken. There had once been a lid, but whatever had sealed it had long since corroded. What remained was a fractured stone disc, barely holding itself together, with a jagged opening at its center. From that opening, smoke drifted, thin, slow, constant. It curled upward in a way that felt wrong, like it had shape, like it knew where it was going. The stone was scorched black, and the well extended far deeper than I could see. The air around it smelled of char and something sweeter, sickly, like rotting fruit. It wasn't just a well, it was a chimney. Something below had been burning for a long, long time. From that moment on, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started doing research, looking into the neighborhood, the land, the history of the block. I found old property records that listed the house behind mine as the original structure, the very first one built here. And where was my great aunt? Really? She had sold me the house and said she was moving into assisted living, but I hadn't heard from her since. No phone call, no return address, no trace. That same week, I noticed the couple behind me had disappeared completely. Their car was still in the driveway, but no lights, no sound, no movement. The mailbox overflowed, so I brought the mail to their door. The door was unlocked. I paused, uncertain, but curiosity got the better of me. I had to know what was inside. Inside, the air was thick. The curtains were drawn. The furniture was ancient, but in pristine condition. Everything in the house was dark. Dark wood, dark fabrics, dark walls. Symbols were etched faintly into the corners of the ceilings. Mirrors were covered in soot or painted black. A strange music played quietly from somewhere below. And then I found the stairs, narrow, winding, and leading into the earth. I stood there, my hand on the railing, frozen. But I had to know. At the bottom, I found a vast underground space, lit by dim red bulbs. The air was heavy and the walls stretched outward into narrow corridors, vanishing into darkness. It was silent, but not empty. The space felt like a waiting room, quiet, patient, knowing. Along the far wall, I saw a map. Not just of the house, but of the entire neighborhood. Each house marked with a name. At the top of the list, my great aunt and uncle, the neighbors across the street, were on there too. Their names were faintly scratched out, still legible beneath the wear. I always thought they were just quiet, ordinary, but maybe that was their role, to watch, to wait, to make sure no one stumbled into a place they weren't meant to find. Gatekeepers, perhaps. My great aunt and uncle at the top, though. Does that mean they were high up? Leaders? I don't know, I can only guess. My uncle had died in an accident. Or at least, that's what they said. And now it was my name, written beside theirs. Not marked like the others. No role, no title. Just circled, like a target, or something waiting to be claimed. I couldn't let it go. I spent days after that moment digging deeper into family records, old census data, parish listings, even archived newspaper clippings. The more I looked, the more I began to see it. Everything started with my great-great-grandparents. They moved here from Italy in the late 1800s. My side of the family, my parents and grandparents, had always been deeply Catholic. Regular Mass, holy water in the house, crosses on every wall. But the rest of my extended family, they were different. Their version of faith was quieter, stranger. Something unspoken threaded through their lives. They never brought up God, never talked about church, just vague phrases about the old ways. I began connecting names. Through public records and hints I found in my grandfather's things, I started to see how many of my extended relatives still lived in this neighborhood. How many of the homes marked on the map lined up with names I recognized. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. I even started looking into the girls I had dated. Facebook, Instagram, small breadcrumbs at first mutual friends, tagged photos, last names that showed up again and again. One of them, who claimed to be from 2 towns over, I saw in a story posted by a local account, walking in front of a house just down the block from mine, at night. They hadn't just been random relationships. They were all connected, all local, all part of the same web. They had never left. None of them really left. It all led here, but not in the way I expected. The realization didn't strike all at once. It came slowly, a series of threads pulled taut from different corners of my life until they converged. I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. I had to go into the house behind mine, not just to deliver mail or look through windows, but to confront it, to understand. The first time I couldn't bring myself to go further. I saw the strange interior, the symbols, the soot-covered mirrors, but it was a second door downstairs, just beyond the staircase, that stopped me cold. Heavy, wooden, sealed shut. That's where I found the map taped to the door, almost like a warning or an invitation. I didn't open it. I left. But after the research, after everything I uncovered about my family, the neighborhood, the girls, I couldn't ignore the pull anymore. So I went back. The door is open now, and maybe it always has been. I used to think this life was mine, shaped by choice, by chance, by effort. But the longer I stand here, the more I realize it was a pattern, a page, a roll passed down like scripture. Everything familiar was a script, and I had been reading my lines from the start. Groomed to follow, groomed to arrive here. Every smile rehearsed, every path inevitable. This isn't a decision, it's a sacrifice. I think something is following me. I am what some people would call a painfully average Joe. I wake up, brush my teeth, eat my breakfast, usually chosen from a breakfast menu from a fast food joint. Go to work, eat lunch, always some kind of ramen or slap-together sandwich made by yours truly. Work some more, ride a bus home, take a shower, eat dinner, watch some trash television on Netflix or something, and finally go to bed. What I listed just now is my everyday life. I follow the same routine every day from the moment I wake up to the moment I eventually go to sleep. Nothing in my life has any excitement or thrill to it. I have no hobbies, I don't have a spouse or anyone to go home to, and I have no friends outside of work. Not to imply that I have work friends. Every time I go into the office, I feel invisible. Most conversations I have with my coworkers usually last 10 to 30 seconds, and it's always some sort of awkward small talk. It's my fault, really. I've always tended to lean towards the socially inept side of things. My name is Mitch, by the way, and I'm an office clerk, in case any of you are curious enough to care. Now, I didn't come on here to bore you to death with the dullness of my everyday life. I came here to ask for some advice. Right now, I'm writing this on my personal laptop at 4 a.m. on a Wednesday. I should be sleeping right now. I don't get up for 2 hours, but I'm too scared to death to sleep because I'm afraid if I do, it'll get me. It's outside right now. I see it out my window, and I think it's following me. Scratch that, not think. I know it's following me. I've been seeing it everywhere lately. At first, it was just in the corner of my eye, but I think it's been getting more bold lately. The reason I keep calling the thing an it is because I know it's not a person. From a distance, it looks like a British businessman ripped straight from the 1950s. It looks like a guy with a gray French suit, a thin black tie, and a black bowler hat. Its face is off-putting to say the least. Its eyes are way too small and way too spaced apart. They're like little black beads on either side of its skull. Its mouth and lips are huge compared to the rest of its face and are way below its eyes and nose. It has broad shoulders and a stockier build compared to the average person, and to top it all off, it has a thin, minuscule mustache over its mouth. It would be funny looking if it weren't so ominous. Looking over what I've just written so far, I think I should name this thing. I'm starting to get tired of calling this thing an it, or the thing. From now on, I'm just gonna call it Mr. Blank. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, I think I first started seeing Mr. Blank roughly a couple of months back. I think it was in early February when I was waiting at a bus stop for a smart bus. I don't have a car because I don't have my driver's license despite being a fully grown man. Plus, since I live in an urban area, I never really saw the use of a car when there was free public transportation. Anyway, when I was waiting at the bus stop, I was scrolling on my phone to pass the time. I don't remember what exactly it was that I invested all my attention to. It was most likely cute dog videos. It was about 7:30ish in the morning when I saw a black amorphous blob at the corner of my eye. When I turned my head to see what it was gone. I looked around for a bit before I shrugged it off and went about my day. After that, things only escalated from there. I thought I was just seeing things and needed to get more sleep, but as the days went on, I started seeing it more. I started seeing more shapeless masses around me more frequently, and eventually, those blobs started to become what I now call Mr. Blank. I saw him outside the restaurant where I was eating lunch a couple of days ago, the sidewalk across the street where I would usually walk. I passed him while reading the bus to work on a few occasions, and just recently, I saw it staring at me through the window in the office building I work at. And now I'm here, furiously clacking away at my laptop in the middle of the night. I don't know what else to do. I'm genuinely afraid for my life here. The only reason I'm even awake right now is because I was looking over some extra work from the office yesterday and I just noticed this bastard out my apartment window. He's just standing there, looking at me, judging me. He won't leave me alone. I can't go confront him because he looks way stronger than me, and I'm not exactly in peak physical form myself. I can't ask for help because I don't think anyone else can see him besides me. Most times he's by himself, but there were few occasions where he'd just be in a crowd and people would just pass by him like he were just another guy on the sidewalk. I need help. Please, give me some suggestions on what to do. I'm at my wit's end here. I don't know what this thing will do if I don't figure something out. Yogi Bear's Jellystone adventure was horrifying. Bobber was a good friend of mine. In my adult years, Bob was teaching at a high school that I used to go to until he was let go because of an argument with another worker. He was given a generous sum of money before his departure, which he used to fund his favorite hobby, urban exploring. I used to joke with him by asking if he was ballsy enough to sneak into Disney's Discovery Island. Bobbert would respond by telling me that he had children and how they would get angry if he got banned off of Disneyland. Every abandoned home or deserted theme park that he visited, he would report what he found. To him, this sort of thing was a passion to him, and while there was the risk of being caught and charged for trespassing, no one was the wiser or didn't care. I was curious about the trips Bob made, and at this time, I was facing burnout from my usual hobbies, which was why I was excited when he invited me to do some exploring at a shutdown resort known as Yogi Bear's Jellystone Adventure. Me and my sister were taken there in our young years, and we loved it. It's still around, but it's now owned by a different company, a new name, and another location that's too far away for me to get to. It doesn't matter, as I outgrew most of the activities that were in that place. It's kinda sad, really. The resort was a hybrid between a camping ground and a water park. Besides the latter, it had a giant lake where you could fish, a golfing course, a cafeteria, and there were several events that played out throughout the day. I remember the treasure hunt I participated in, and how there were cameos involving other Hanna-Barbera characters such as Scooby-Doo, who occasionally showed up to join in on the fun. I remember how the costume characters would walk around and greet us by waving in our direction. I also remembered how we rented out a cabin instead of sleeping in a tent, which was amazing because the deluxe cabin came with a free breakfast per day. Of course, there were stories of less than pleasant experiences. One example that comes to mind is the story I heard in my school, where one of the actors got bored and tried to imitate Yogi Bear from the cartoon. You can imagine how that turned out when complaints were filed after a mother notified Ranger Smith that Yogi was peeking from behind a bush to steal the average picnic basket while their kid was eating. This terrified the child enough that the family vacation was cut short. The person in costume got in trouble for this, and restrictions on what can be done with the suits were put in place to prevent another incident like this. Sadly, on the following year, the place shut down. Why? The owner lost interest in the resort and didn't want to pay the yearly licensing fee to use Hanna-Barbera characters. What's even weirder is that the announcement was sudden without any warning. The land itself was sold off to a mysterious buyer who is unknown to this day to the public. I arrived that afternoon as I was close to the location from where I lived. I soon passed by the statue of Yogi Bear, which surprised me to still see it intact. Usually when a license isn't renewed, a company will request a video where all the props get smashed or burned down. It was a relief to see that the gluttonous bear statue was fine. As soon as I parked my truck at one of the many empty lots, I noticed there were a couple of camping tents pitched up around the area. At first, it made me think the resort was still in business until I noticed that no one seemed to be inside any of them. There were also no signs discouraging trespassing, so anyone could come in here and mistake the place for being operational despite being closed off long ago. I was confused to why these tents were here until Bob snuck up from behind to give me a surprise. "Gotcha!" he howled as I turned around. I was about to throw a punch until I realized who it was. "You shouldn't do that. I could have hit you by mistake." Bob gave out a mild sigh before apologizing. We caught up on some things before I questioned him about the tents. "Oh yeah, about that. Some people sneak in to try to camp out here. The rangers, though, keep coming by to chase them off. Luckily, I know their schedule and they're not due to return for a couple of days. I think we should check the tents to see if anything is inside them," I said, feeling mischievous. "Trust me, you don't want to. I tried that already and the squirrel came running out. I'm lucky I didn't get bitten and have to get treated for it," Bob replied. "Good point. What should we look at instead?" I followed Bob as we set out to the big lake. It was the most familiar part of the trip to me, as I remember swimming in the water while my parents were fishing close by. I also remembered the rental pontoon boats and how we took one out to enjoy the breeze and the water. Good times. As we took the hiking path around that lake, I spotted a pontoon stranded in the middle. I took my camera, zoomed in, and noticed a big dent in it. Bob theorized that another pontoon must have clashed with someone else, which I agreed with as there wasn't another explanation to how that happened. I took a couple pictures before we finished our loop and arrived in the playground area. The playground could be summed up as the central hub that connected to other parts of the resort. Signs would point guests in the direction of the water park, the golfing course, the cafe, the lake that we came from, and the various campgrounds that offered different scenery. The play area itself was divided up into 3 sections, one for younger children, one for older kids, and one for teens. The young section had Smurfs, the middle, Yogi Bear, and the older, Scooby-Doo. In the corner of the Scooby-Doo area was the iconic mystery machine that looked accurate to the cartoon. The passages of time sadly caused some of the van's paint to peel off, but that wasn't the campground's fault. I remember Bob daring me to go up on the equipment, but the fear of it crumbling under my size made me decline. Bob tried goading me into doing his dare and even tried offering money. Nope, I wasn't budging and he didn't want to try either, so we moved on to the golf course. Since the field had been unattended, it was overgrown with weeds and tall grass. The rental booth still had a fair share of golf balls, but someone had taken all of the clubs. Since we couldn't do a proper game, we looked around for a bit until we spotted something sticking out of the grass. It was the bones of a deceased dog who perished from mysterious circumstances. Everything on its skin had been picked clean by passing vultures. At the water park, the wave pool had been contaminated with green water. Swamp grass was starting to grow, and the smell made us both stay far away. Since everything was shut off, there wasn't a real point in staying. Bob interrupted as we returned to the playground once more. "Hey, I have to take a piss and check on something. You're free to keep looking around without me, but let's meet up at the cafe. I want to be with you when we go there." "Sure, I see no problem with that." Now by myself, a thought came to mind. I never bothered to take a picture of that Scooby-Doo van. I cautiously approached the mystery machine and prayed that something wasn't in there. I snapped a photo. I got closer to get a picture from all sides, and as I continued to take photos, I had the idea of taking pictures from the inside. As I inched closer and closer, the back of the van's door had a dent in it. Since none of the vehicle's doors were opened, I finally gathered the courage to take pictures of the inside to find the first oddity of the trip. Inside were signs that all read the same thing. "No trespassing, private property. Violators will be prosecuted under the criminal trespass section of the law." Someone had gone to the trouble of taking all of the signs posted down and placing them into this van. If someone got caught snooping around, they could claim there were no signs around to get out of trouble. I theorized for a bit before I decided on my next stop, the camping grounds themselves. When I arrived, I was caught off guard by the amount of camping tents. Did all of these people really try to sneak in after the place closed? I asked myself. Despite the unease, I ignored Bob's warning and unzipped one of the abandoned tents. Inside, several belongings laid on the floor, including a backpack that had a Game Boy Advance. Don't judge me, but I wasn't going to pass on that and snatched it. Another camping ground had a smaller lake which looped around in a 10 to 20 minute walk. There were even more tents surrounding the water with fishing poles close by. Despite the amount of tents still up, I didn't really question it much until I found that one campsite. Several objects had been tossed over, a hammock laid torn on the ground, food was left uncovered to rot, and a tent had several rips and tears. It was like a struggle or a fight had broken out, and for the first time I was uncomfortable. Why were there so many tents? Were these really people trying to sneak in? How long had they been left here? What made me turn the way I came was when a thought ringed into my head. What if they were here when the camping resort was still operational? If that was the case, what made everyone quick to leave without grabbing a single thing? I had to find Bob. As I made my way to the planned meeting spot, the cafe, to warn Bob, I walked past the few cabins along the pathway. From one of them, a horrible stench emitted. I'll never understand why I jimmied the lock with the tools I had on me. Despite my paranoia, my curiosity at this point was still stronger. Perhaps it was a good thing because I would have never realized the danger I was in when I opened that door to find the large bones littering the wooden floor. They were all similar to the dog back at the golfing course, and even thought they had been left here for ages. The stench almost made me throw up. I quickly left the cabin and turned my walking into running. "Bobbert!" I yelled out. I wasn't going to abandon my friend. I had to warn him of my discovery. I quickly made it to the cafe's entrance to see Bob standing at the front entrance. "We have to leave. It isn't safe," I called out. "We just got here. There's more to discover that no one else has found." I tried to explain before I got cut off. "You could have been bitten," Bob yelled out as he started inching his way closer to the cafe. "Bobbert, listen to me. We're not safe," I shouted. "You're just being paranoid," he scowled at me, annoyed. Nothing was getting through to him as he started to head inside. I rushed after until we reached the cafeteria itself. The room had several tables and a stage show that I never had a chance of seeing back when my family arrived, as it had been completely booked. "Look, I can show you what I found," I pleaded. "I'm good. Come. You finally have a chance to see the show. We can check behind the stage. Maybe we'll find some costumes that we can sell for a profit." How did he know about that? More alarms were going off, and by following Bobbert I had endangered myself. I refused to take another step, and after standing there, Bob tried waving me over until I backed away. "I'm sorry, Bobbert, but I'm heading home," I said. I turned around to make my exit when Bob suddenly grabbed me from behind. The initial shock and paranoia caused me to throw a punch without looking. Bob let go of me as he staggered for a bit before he looked at me desperately. "Please, you can't leave. You have to come with me. He'll be angry if I let you go." I didn't have a chance to ask what he meant as he made a lunge towards me. This time he pinned me to the floor and attempted to restrain me. "This isn't anything personal, but you're not Lel." I took my chance and nailed him in the groin before he could finish his sentence. I then delivered a kick to the chest and sent him falling off of me. I rushed out of the cafe as I could hear Bob screaming. Something was tearing away at his flesh. Whatever it was, there were multiples of it. Whatever Bob had been friends with, it was now hungry. I don't know how I managed to escape, but the next thing I knew, I was in my car driving off. As I was about to leave and never return, I looked into the rearview mirror to see several figures who would give me nightmares for years to come. There were people dressed up as Scooby-Doo, a Smurf I didn't recognize, Jabberjaw, Snagglepuss, Huckleberry Hound, and Yogi Bear, who was front and center. Every costume had blood spots, with each actor looking deformed. The deformities in the brief second I looked caused multiple holes of the costumes to rip open, which exposed lumpy bits of flesh. Whatever they were, they watched me take off without moving from their spot. I never told anyone about my trip, and I never reported Bobbert's disappearance. I simply moved on and acted oblivious when several news outlets asked viewers with information to contact the authorities. Before it all died down, I asked myself one question. Why was Bobbert helping those things? What was he getting out of it? There was a good reason why that place never reopened. It wasn't because of a licensing expiration, it was because of what happened on those grounds. That night in Burnton. A couple of years ago, tail end of the pandemic, I was sent on an overnight work trip to Burnton, a small picturesque seaside town about 5 hours away from the big city where we live. This is the story of what happened that night. I was done with my meetings later in the afternoon. We drove into the hotel parking lot, me and my wife Hilda. It had been a hard day, a long early morning drive to Burnton, followed by a series of intense meetings with development people. Everyone was excited. Land prices were going up like crazy in this sleepy, forgotten town. Old houses that were on the market for 10 years were shifting like hotcakes. But by 5 p.m., my energy was dwindling. I was dying to get to my hotel room and unwind. I know my wife Hilda was looking forward to it too. She had opted to travel with me, which was quite unusual for a work trip. I put it down to her being bored from going nowhere in the pandemic, and it was nice enough to have her with me. And it seemed like she had had a pleasant afternoon in town while I was at my meetings, in the local coffee shops and by the beach. But she looked tired and drawn too. The first thing that caught our attention was the police car, neatly parked by the main entrance. Then I spotted a couple yellow and orange police barriers, folded away and lying to the side. We didn't think much of it, but there was no doubt the receptionist, as she checked us in, looked somewhat worried and tense. I gestured outside. "Looks like you've been having some excitement here," I remarked amiably. She gave a little nervous laugh. "Oh yes, well, very sad, but the police presence is going to be over in an hour, and I am sure you'll have an excellent night stay with us." She smiled brightly at me, all her teeth showing. At the same time, my wife, who had been chatting to someone in the lobby behind me, swept up to the counter. "You had a murder here last night, and you weren't going to tell us," she demanded. I felt bad for the poor receptionist. She flushed and started stammering. Mr. Winters said it wasn't necessary to alarm the GG guests. Police agreed. They arrested the culprits anyway. My wife said in an imperious voice, "I am sure I would like to know if I am sleeping across a murder scene." My heart sank. I was dropping from fatigue, and at that point I didn't care if the massacre of the innocents had happened in the lobby. I needed a lie down, followed by a nice warm bath with plenty of that snazzy hotel bath stuff, and then room service. I gave Hilda a pleading look. She read my mind through the marital wireless all us married folk have. She shrugged, snatched up the keycards and marched off towards the elevator. I followed gratefully. In the elevator, she said, "Don't blame me if we get slaughtered in our beds tonight." I was mildly surprised. Hilda is a stoic, unimaginative woman, not given to fanciful or paranoid musings. "Oh, Hilda, you heard the poor girl. It wasn't a random attack and they arrested the murderer anyway. Even the police are leaving." She shrugged again. We stepped out of the elevator. Looking round to find our door, it was impossible to ignore more barriers and yellow crime tape further down the corridor. "Hilda!" exclaimed. "Christ, it actually happened on our floor." I muttered and pointed to our door. "There we are, dear. Room 202, ocean view, just like you asked. Did you want to order room service?" She rolled her eyes, and we swiped in our room about 3 doors down from the taped-off murder room. Finally, I was soaking in my bath, smelling the heavenly lavender. Hilda was on her laptop, and I heard her call out. It was a stabbing. There are some tweets about it. I grunted something. She called again. Actually seems like they were local business owners who had a disagreement that got out of hand. "I'm surprised you didn't hear anything at your meeting, Todd." I turned on the faucets and dipped my head under the foamy, frothy water, blocking out her voice to a distant rumble. Hours later, I woke up to the sounds of men's voices. I knew instantly where I was, but for a moment I thought they were in my room. The voices were so loud and clear. It would be impossible to fall back asleep with that noise. I had another long day ahead, plus the drive back to the city, and I felt furious. I wanted to call the front desk, but didn't want to risk waking Hilda. I looked at her rolled-up body in the duvet, turned away from me. The voices were getting louder, although I couldn't understand a word of what was being said. I decided to get out of bed and go downstairs and complain. The hotel room wasn't too dark, and I slipped outside, pulling on my jacket over my pajamas. The corridor was lit with only 2 lights. I noticed the spectacularly ugly carpet, and the terrible pattern made me feel dizzy for a moment. I looked up and noticed the police barriers and tape had gone. The police must have come in after we checked into our room. For some reason, the thought made me even more unsettled. The voices sounded a bit more muffled through the corridor, and I contemplated going back to bed. As I paused, my hand still on the doorknob, I heard a sudden loud shout, louder than anything before. I froze in fear. Then silence. How come other guests were not rushing out, or complaining? As I stood still in the corridor, fearful and uncertain what to do, the door 3 down from ours opened, and a man staggered out, bent double, holding his stomach. He saw me, and started coming towards me. Even in the dim light, I could see the blood trickling through his fingers. "William, no!" somebody cried from the room. "Get him!" The staggering man reached towards me with his bloody hands and grasped at my pajama shirt. "Help me!" he gasped. I knew what he wanted from me, but I couldn't risk my job, my life with Hilda, and I was afraid of the men in the room, of what they could do to me if I helped William. I desperately untangled his clutching fingers from my pajama shirt. 2 other men stepped outside. "William," one of them roared, "you can stop us." They tore him away from me, dragged him further back down the corridor, and back into the room they had come out from. I thought they couldn't see me, but just before they vanished inside, one of them turned, looked straight at me and winked. My blood ran cold. The door slammed shut behind them. The sound broke my paralysis. I turned and went back inside my own room. I knew perfectly well what was happening. I am not crazy. I was dreaming. This was a dream, about the events that possibly had happened the night before we arrived. It was nothing to do with my job, nothing to do with me at all. I was doing nothing wrong. Everything was correct and above board. I fell back into a deep sleep. I woke up very early. Hilda was still fast asleep. She must have taken sleeping pills last night. I hated when she did that. I got up, extremely refreshed and alert. I could remember the dream from last night very clearly, but I was equally clear it had just been a dream, and I was ready to shower, wake up Hilda and drive off, leaving that god-awful town behind me and hopefully never to return. I didn't even want their complimentary breakfast. I decided we would stop for coffee on the way, although I knew it would be another tussle with Hilda to get her to agree to forgo the endless bacon promised by the hotel buffet. I stepped into the bathroom and turned on the light, turned on the taps and glanced down, and saw the bloody handprint smears, still bright scarlet, burning on my pajama shirt. The man on the line. For several years I worked as a call center agent. I spent my days calling people, trying to sell them various things. I'm sure all of you have received this kind of call at least once in your lives. A telephone operator, for example, trying to sell you a mobile plan. Let's be honest, we could all do without these calls. We've all felt that urge, myself included, before I switch sides to tell the guy or gal trying to push their offer to get lost. Very often the person on the other end doesn't even have time to finish their introductory sentence before we've already hung up or blurted out, "I'm not interested, goodbye." I couldn't stand those kinds of calls. Then one day I received a job offer to become the guy who calls people all day. When I took my first calls, I realized something. Many people seem unaware that a human being is calling them. It's as if they think we're soulless, heartless robots incapable of feeling any emotion. I do exactly as I'm told. I follow the script given to me, and I don't decide whom I should or shouldn't call. As a result, I often got shut down, and not always very politely. That wasn't the only downside of the job. It was repetitive too. We kept saying the same thing over and over, and the days were long. There were, however, some positives. Whenever I managed to sell a subscription to someone I didn't even know from Adam to Eve, I must admit I was filled with a sense of pride. That didn't completely erase the inconveniences, but over time I got used to it. I had developed my little routines. Then one day, a phone call turned my life upside down. This was about a year ago. That call terrified me. I lost sleep for several weeks. I had already encountered my share of oddities during my many years of loyal service at the call center, but this time I was seriously freaked out to the point that for the first time in my career I had to take several weeks off on sick leave. I was traumatized. It was a Friday, nearly at the end of my shift. It must have been around 7:30 p.m. We were nearing the end of our call list, so there were a lot of answering machines and quite a bit of waiting time between calls. I'd been waiting for 3 minutes when a new contact finally appeared. I began as usual. "Hello, this is Max from sales." The man on the other end of the phone interrupted me, telling me to stop immediately. Up to that point, nothing unusual. This happens often. I paused for a second to listen to what he had to say. Usually, people who say that go on to complain either about the calls or to insist that they aren't interested. But this time he said nothing. I could only hear his heavy breathing, so I continued. "I'm calling you to." "Shut up, Max." My irritation began to mount. It was the end of the day, and although I was used to rude people, this was really getting on my nerves. You have to understand that as call center agents, we have strict guidelines not to talk down to our clients, and no matter what they say, we're supposed to remain polite and courteous. So, even though I felt like telling that idiot to get lost, I simply replied, "Sir, I apologize if..." He cut me off again. "Stop calling me Max. I don't like it." "Sir, it's an automated system calling you. Perhaps you received a call from one of my colleagues." "No, I know it's you calling me all the time, Max." While speaking and listening to him, I checked the call history. I began to feel uneasy. He was right. It was always my name on the record. I had always sent him to voicemail. He had never answered before. This was the first time. To you, it might not seem strange at all, but I assure you it wasn't normal that I was always the one reaching this guy. On a call platform, there are several teams in mine. There were nearly 20 people. The calls are distributed randomly by software among the available agents. Logically, my name shouldn't have been the only one showing up in the history. The system had already called him 8 times that month, and it was always me who got through, never one of my colleagues. I tried to reassure myself by thinking that perhaps the software was malfunctioning. It wouldn't have been the first time. The fact that my name appeared systematically must have been a bug. And the guy had no way of knowing that the same number was always calling him, and that annoyed him. He wasn't singling me out specifically. "If we contact you, it's because..." He interrupted me once more. "I told you to shut up, Tom." I was stunned. Max is just a pseudonym I use among many others. My real name is Tom. How could he know that? Max, sir." I tried to control my voice. I didn't want to let on how disturbed I was. "No, you're Tom, and you keep calling me. I don't like it. I'll make sure this never happens again." I wasn't quite sure I understood what he meant, whether he was actually threatening me. My eyes were fixed on his name as I tried to recall if I recognized it from somewhere or if it wasn't just a bad joke from a friend who recognized my voice. But no matter how hard I looked, his name was completely unknown to me. He continued, "I know you call me from a call center in Northern England." That was true too, but I tried to console myself by thinking that Northern England was vague, and to my knowledge, several companies work in telemarketing. Except then he gave me the exact city and the name of the company where I worked. He even detailed my work schedule. I was supposed to be off the following Thursday, and he told me he would find me then. All I wanted to do was hang up, but you're not allowed to hang up on a customer. I still tell myself that if I had hung up, no one would have blamed me. It was an exceptional case. Instead, I sat there like an idiot, eyes glued to the computer, continuing to listen. "It'll make you stop harassing people. Your navy blue scarf will be very useful to shut your big mouth." Then he hung up. I was paralyzed. Needless to say, I was indeed wearing a navy blue scarf. I sat there doing nothing for a good 5 minutes, my hands trembling. My colleagues noticed that something was wrong and asked what was happening. Since the calls were recorded, my supervisor listened to the conversation. I still hoped it was a joke that my boss would say, "It's nothing, don't worry," but instead I saw him break down as the recording played. The police were contacted. I was interrogated to confirm that I truly didn't know who my caller was. An investigation took place, and afterward I refused to go back to work. My doctor put me on sick leave. I was placed under police surveillance, especially on that infamous Thursday when the man said he'd find me. Nothing happened that day, nor on the following days. The investigation led nowhere. They never managed to track down the guy. The number I'd been calling was no longer in service, and the name didn't match any current or former customer of the operator I worked for. Even now, I have no idea who that man was. I had to take medication to calm myself down. I was so stressed. I was forced to take sleeping pills just to get some rest. I kept having the same nightmare, the guy breaking into my home to kill me. Several weeks later, I managed to pull myself together and went back to work. I could have changed jobs. I might even have needed to change then, but I don't have any qualifications, and I really didn't know what else I could do. The first day, and even the first week, went about normally. I was still anxious, but to a lesser degree than during my sick leave. Then, after several weeks, I had nearly recovered from that horrible experience. 2 months later, I was moved to a different shift, which meant I would be working for another operator. After a few days of training with new colleagues, we set off to make calls. 2 weeks after that, the nightmare began again. Around 6 p.m., a new contact appeared. It was under a woman's name. I began my pitch, and this time I was using the pseudonym Alex. There was a sigh on the other end of the line. Nothing unusual. This sort of thing happens quite often, I continued, presenting the purpose of my call. Fiber had been installed in her town. Is that you again, Tom? It was the same voice as before. I was petrified, unable to move or utter a word. How was it that I kept getting this psycho? It wasn't the same name. I was sure of it. I had been traumatized enough not to forget it. He continued. I missed our appointment. You were too surrounded. For a brief moment I even considered being lenient, but you've called me 6 times now, Tom. I'm not going to let this slide. See you soon. He hung up. I checked the call history, and once again, he was right. I had called him 5 times before today, and I had always sent him straight to voicemail. The nightmare was repeating itself. I reported it again to my superiors, and another investigation took place, but unsurprisingly, it led nowhere. It was impossible to trace this man. That very day, I decided to quit. I never set foot in a call center again. Weeks and months passed. I found a job as a sales clerk in a shop. I thought I was finally done with all that when one day a blocked number called my cell phone. I answered automatically. Don't think I've forgotten you, Tom. Nice leather jacket. It was him. I hung up immediately. He didn't try to call back. I thought I was going to faint from terror. How had he gotten my cell number? The most terrifying part was that I actually did own a leather jacket. He was out there somewhere and he was watching me. I looked around. There were people everywhere. I was in a shopping mall, but no one seemed to be staring or watching me. I blended into the crowd, and once outside the mall, I ran to the nearest police station. I figured that if I ran fast enough, no matter where that guy was, I'd manage to shake him off. Once again, the police were of no help. It was impossible to trace the call, of course. After that, I changed my number and even moved to another region, hoping that would be enough to escape that lunatic. I have panic attacks every time my phone rings. For a while, I even considered giving up having a cell phone altogether. It has been 5 months since that last call. Nothing has happened since. I keep trying to convince myself it was just a tasteless joke. Having changed my number and moved, I tell myself there's no way for that guy to find me. And yet, I'm writing all of this today because I need help. For the past 2 hours, my cell phone hasn't stopped ringing. It's a blocked number, and I'm too scared to answer. It's the middle of the night, and I'm too afraid to leave my home. I'm sure it's him, and that he's watching me from somewhere. My fear is a curse, a paradox, and a key. Being afraid is perfectly natural, Russ. There's nothing more human than fear. It's a reminder that you're alive after all. Anyone who's alive has something to lose, right? Dr. O'Clair would say things like that to me all the time, waxing poetic bullshit in my general direction from 5 to 6 p.m. every Tuesday evening for nearly a decade. I liked my childhood therapist, don't get me wrong. He was kind, attentive, and he seemed to be trying his damnedest to fix me. That said, none of cognitive behavioral therapy worked. Of course, how could it? As much as I attempted to explain that my fear was just plain different and may not respond to his normal repertoire of techniques, Dr. O'Clair didn't appear to understand. At least, that's what I used to believe. Now it's clear to me that Dr. O'Clair did understand. He just wasn't making his intentions known, manipulating and pulling me along like a conniving puppeteer. My current theory is that somehow the fear was the key to his release. But before it could free him, though, it needed to be purified, distilled to perfection, the terror fermenting over months and years like a decadent Merlot. And when he decided it was exquisitely ripe, Dr. O'Clair culled it without a second thought. I wish I knew how he did it, and why I was chosen in particular, but I suspect I'll never get those answers. I'm learning how to live with that. One day at a time. Normal fear is born from something. It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. There's always a cause and an effect. Something horrific happens, and the result is fear. You take a tumble down some stairs, and now you're afraid of falling. Your aunt's German Shepherd bites you, and now you're afraid of dogs. My fear, on the other hand, never had that linkage. It just was. The exception that proves the rule. Terror born without a mother, the fear equivalent of immaculate conception. I know what you're thinking, isn't that just anxiety then? Some generalized, vague fear of everything? That's the rub though. My fears weren't universal, quite the contrary. Actually, they were hyper-specific, unexplainably pinpointed from the very beginning. Ever since I can remember, I've been afraid of something, or someone popping out of an enclosed space. Take my first birthday party. The moment a gift was put in front of me, which my family wrapped for the fun at, I was inconsolable and told I was wailing like a banshee, trying to run away from the gift on legs that barely had the coordination to walk. My response was so extreme that my parents actually ended up taking me to the emergency room. They thought I may have been having a seizure or something. The doctors checked me out, but I was completely fine. After a few disastrous Christmas mornings, I was booked for therapy with Dr. Auclair. I always left his office feeling a little better, but in the long run my fear never improved. If anything, it steadily worsened, year after year, reaching a peak intensity right before the event that would make our small-town national news. Have you ever noticed how you talk about your fear, Russ? The vocabulary you use, I mean. 12-year-old me shrugged, struggling to provide an answer. Dr. Auclair put down his notepad and leaned forward in his chair. Well, you always describe it as afraid of something popping out, never jumping out, never emerging, never appearing. Whatever you're afraid of, it's always popping out. Why do you think that is? Honestly, I found his question irritating. He knew me well by that point. I felt like he could have guessed how I was going to respond. Like I've said before, I don't understand why I fear what I fear. It's all just a feeling, something in my gut that makes total sense to me, even if I can't explain it. Like, I just know that popped out is the right phrase. It's the only correct words to describe it, even if I'm unable to tell you why. What does it matter anyway? He leaned back, smiling at me. I suppose you're right. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. Dr. Auclair winked, pulled his box-shaped glasses to the bridge of his nose, and then he said something that made no sense at the time. Not yet, at least. When Jack died, I was desperate to have a visit with Dr. Auclair, but I found that he was scheduled to move out of town the exact day he died. Everything had been planned months in advance. He was already long gone by the time I called the office. Didn't mention any of that to me. Didn't leave a forwarding address either. I developed a veritable Rolodex of bullies over my high school years. Honestly, there had to be at least one on every page of my yearbook. My strange fear made me an easy target. I wouldn't classify Jack as a bully, though. That shithead was an entirely different breed. Tormentor is probably a more appropriate label, but even that doesn't capture the depths of his sadism. Although the boy was thin, he compensated for that by being tall, towering over me at a height of at least 6.5 feet, wide forehead, freckled face, beady eyes. An absolute fucking monster prowling this earth with hate seething behind his smile, inflicting pain without limitations. Once he discovered my fear of something or someone popping out at me, he simply could not get enough. The joy and the satisfaction that Jack was able to milk from my admittedly peculiar terror was seemingly endless. To him, my trauma was a wellspring of fresh dopamine created for him and him alone to enjoy, refilling itself infinitely. If it wasn't a beating, it was him sneaking up with a shoebox containing a spider, popping it out at me once he got close. If it wasn't a prank that targeted my fears, it was a laundry list of insults spit at me, usually about how pathetic my fears were. No matter what, it was something every day, weekends included. Preoccupied by a messy divorce, my parents weren't much help. Because of that, Mr. Muller was my only source of support. I'd known the man my whole life. He lived alone in a 3-story house down the street for the last 40 years. Never found himself a wife, never had any kids. When he retired from his job as a mechanical engineer, Mr. Muller finally pursued his genuine passions, custom-built toys. His shop never seemed to get much business, but I don't think that was the point. Unburdened by the financial strain that comes with having a family, he'd accumulated a small fortune for himself over the years, which allowed the shop to remain afloat even if it wasn't turning a profit. We had a certain kinship, Mr. Muller and I. He was an outcast too. His eccentricities kept people at arm's length. But he was always kind to me, day in and day out, taking me in and patching up my injuries, both physical and mental. Despite our close relationship, I never disclosed the specific details of my fears to him. Embarrassment had stitched my lips shut. He knew I was different, like him, and that made me a target for people like Jack, which made what he did nearly impossible to explain. Unless there was some outside influence that had been pulling the strings. One afternoon, I arrived at Mr. Muller's, holding back hot tears from the blinding pain in my wrist. I had been walking home when Jack marched up behind me, shouting obscenities per usual. I didn't say anything back. I didn't respond, period. I kept my head down and my eyes fixed on the sidewalk in front of me. All I wanted was for him to go away. He didn't take my cold shoulder too kindly, knocking me to the ground with a kick and stomping on my wrist over and over again, despite my pleas for mercy. Age did not temper his savagery. At 17, Jack was still the same monster he was at 12. It took a while, but I convinced Mr. Muller not to call the police. Jack's father was the sheriff, and he shielded his boy from many legal repercussions throughout his youth. Needless to say, I had been down that road before, and it only made everything worse. Mr. Muller was livid, face flushed with boiling anger, but he nodded in agreement. As I walked out, I said something that I'll regret for the rest of my life. I just wish he felt my fear. I stopped by Mr. Muller's a week later, and when he saw me, he could barely contain his excitement. The man was practically bursting at the seams when he informed me that he had something really important to show me. The behavior was immediately unnerving. Although he had eccentric hobbies, Mr. Muller wasn't socially awkward or prone to bouts of mania. Growing up in a very strict, very religious German background actually made him obsessively polite and perpetually reserved, so watching him skip and hop through his house like a court jester immediately set me off. Something was desperately wrong with my friend. I tried to convince him to take a seat in the living room and just talk to me, but he pretended like he couldn't hear what I said, frolicking down his basement stairs with an uncanny jubilance. Reluctantly, I followed him down. When I arrived at the bottom, Mr. Muller was nowhere to be seen, but I could hear him, humming a nursery rhyme to himself in his workshop a few yards away behind a cracked door. I slowly tilted the door open, and my long-held fear finally became realized. There was a massive crate in the middle of the room. The sides of it were covered in nonsense words like Herlix and Abdunith, haphazardly painted amongst various shapes and runes I didn't recognize. Splatters of dark greens, blacks, and bright reds covered every fiber of the box like postmodern art installation. Immediately, my heart rate skyrocketed. Blood pulsed heavy waves in my ears. Before I could come up with a way to excuse myself, Mr. Muller was dancing over to the crate. He sauntered around the side of it, disappearing behind the enormous box. For a moment, I thought I saw another figure in the corner, wreathed in shadow. They were staring at me with a downright debilitating intensity, wearing a rapturous smile that extended from ear to ear. The phantom's box-shaped glasses glinted against the ceiling light as they pulled a single necrotic hand from the darkness, waving pus-stained fingers in my direction, as if beckoning me closer. It looked like Dr. Auclair. There was a metallic twisting sound which pulled my attention to the crate and Mr. Muller. When my eyes flickered back to the dark corner, the specter had disappeared. Then I heard something that injected liquid frost into my veins. There were muffled whimpers emanating from within the box. Before I could run, Mr. Muller began singing, bellowing and hollering the words like a TV evangelist. All the while, the metallic twisting noise grew louder and louder, seemingly in unison with his ungodly fervor. All around the cobbler's bench, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey thought 'twas all in fun. Pop goes the weasel. And then the top of the crate swung open, revealing what was inside. Every single second that I've ever been afraid, and every shred of terror that I've ever felt crystallized into that one moment, manifesting this pristine latticework of pain, shock, and panic in my mind. My fear was like a wedge of coal that had been put under years of extreme pressure until it finally transmuted into a brilliant, shimmering diamond. Terror in its purest form. Jack, bloodied and broken, popped out of the crate. I expected him to fall forward, but instead he hung in the air, blocking the ceiling light like an eclipse. A steel pole has been fused to his spine, connected to his bones via a combination of nails, cautery, and thick metallic thread. I could hear Jack's weathered skin ripping and tearing from the tension of his weight against gravity. Blood seeped down the pole, new crimson dripping over older brown-black stains, trailing down to a massive spring located at the base of the crate. My trembling eyes drifted to Jack's maddened, bloodshot gaze, and I could see it. He stared at me with a wild, primal, incomprehensible fear. Months later, I'd hear Mr. Muller's testimony. When he explained why he kidnapped and mutilated Jack, I couldn't help but feel a tiny blip of déjà vu rattle around in my skull. He almost sounded like me talking to my childhood therapist. I wanted Russ to be safe, but like I've mentioned before, I don't completely understand why I hurt him like that. It was just a feeling I couldn't ignore. I might never uncover Dr. Auclair's part in these events. In spite of that, another matter weighs more heavily on my mind than his role in my torment and his cryptic disappearance. The paradox of it all. Look at it this way, it seems like I felt the reverberations of this event all throughout my life, even though it hadn't happened yet. That's where my fear came from, I think. It's like the sensation was so intense that it somehow echoed through me backwards, altering my consciousness since the day I was born. But in order for me to have my fears, Jack has to have died, and in order for him to die, he needed to bully me. That's what caused Mr. Muller's psychotic break in first place. But Jack targeted me for bullying because of my fears, which were predicated on him being killed in such a nightmarish manner. You see what I mean? The more I think about it, the more it all collapses in on itself. It's like trying to build a house by starting from the roof and working down. If you know of Dr. O'Clair or have experienced something similar to this, please let me know. Before I end this post though, I want to leave you all with some food for thought. I've been doing some Googling today about where the name Jack in the Box came from, and this what I found. It has been expressed through folklore and legends that in 15th century France, they were using the boxes for a very specific purpose. In French, a Jack in the Box is called a diable en boîte, which translates to devil in a box. It is said that these boxes were actually created to capture and hold demons or evil spirits. Many would fashion the boxes with elaborate engravings and amusing artwork to lure the demon's interest. They would then employ the playful music and surprise opening of the lid to trap the demons. Their essence was then believed to become trapped in the Jack character, which was why they were originally made to look sinister with maniacal grins. The box was then to be hidden away where no one would ever be tempted to open it again, as doing so would cause the demon to be released back into our dimension. Resource Strange Origins of the Jack in the Box by M.R. Cameo. What was Dr. O'Clair? Did I release him somehow? And is Jack trapped where he used to be? My alarm clock is broken. Save me. Hello everyone. I'm in a bit of a predicament and could use some advice. Please bear with me, this will take some explaining. For context, I've had nightmares ever since childhood. I'd been plagued by them my whole life, to the point where it's just routine for me. When I lay my head down to sleep, I know that I'll more than likely be greeted by a scene straight out of a horror movie. It's not the worst thing in the world, and I suppose others have it worse than I do. At least, that's what people keep telling me. And they're right. When I count my blessings, they outweigh my nightmares. I have a healthy and functional body, a good job, and a caring family. Things that others would kill to have. That being said, I'd like you to put yourself in my shoes for a bit. Imagine that every night, almost without exception, you knew that sleep would be restless and disturbing. Imagine that something so routine, something you do every day, was a constant and inescapable source of dread. I've looked for solutions in the past. I've tried it all: sleeping pills, therapy, meditation, diets. Hell, I even tried a nightlight. Nothing works. The best solution I've ever come across was one I found unintentionally. I got my wisdom teeth removed, and they put me under an anesthetic. The next 2 nights I had no dreams. It was amazing, but it wore off, and the nightmares came right back. I have no access to hospital-grade painkillers, and I had no intention of becoming an addict, so sadly that was off the table. I had come to just accept the nightmares, and hope that they would either go away or get easier to handle with time. Strangely, I could never really identify the source of my nightmares. Whether it's some deep-rooted trauma I have no recollection of or something else entirely, I truly don't know. However, my nightmares do follow a repetition, though they are not entirely identical. In the dreams, I'm in an alleyway. It's dark and filthy, but it doesn't really have any characteristics that could allow me to identify specifically where it is. Either way I look, the alley has no end. It goes on and on for miles until it trails out of my view. Trash cans, dumpsters, and garbage bags line the walls of the buildings on either side. Just like with the alleyway, the buildings seem to have no end to them, either vertically or horizontally. They trail into the sky without end, and follow the alleyway to my front and back forever. In my dream, I'm running down this alleyway from something. I've never seen it, but I can feel it. It's that feeling you get in a dream where you do something that doesn't make logical sense in reality, but in the dream it does. I just know that whatever is behind me, I can't let it catch me. This goes on for a while. Sometimes I'll throw a trash can down behind me in an attempt to trip up my pursuer, but it never really matters. There is no end to this chase. The dream normally concludes with me either tripping and falling, or the sequence of running will simply stop and I'll jolt up in bed. Sleep has never been a friend to me. About 4 months ago, I had a particularly awful night. As usual, my nightmare tormented me for a while until I woke up in bed, my heart hammering in my ears. It was still early, around 1 a.m. My heart was pumping like a rabbit's, and I could practically feel the adrenaline in my veins. I was wide awake now. Sometimes, on nights like these, I find it better not to attempt to go back to sleep. Instead, I'll often opt to go on a walk. It clears my mind and calms me down a bit. So, on this night, I threw on a coat and some boots and stepped outside. It was a beautiful night, cloudless, and with a moon so bright I didn't even really need the street lamps to see. I took my normal route down my street, past my block and into the shopping district. It's strange to see a place normally bustling with people completely empty. It really does feel like the city itself is asleep. That's what I like most about it. It's just my thoughts. And every window was dark, and the doors were closed. Some had neon closed signs plastered by the doorways. All was as it should be, as it normally is, all with one exception. As I walked by the stores, I passed an alleyway, not unlike the one in my dreams. There was a light coming from it that I couldn't ignore, so I looked down the alleyway. There, tucked behind all the other stores, was a door. Above that door was a rustic wooden sign that read Fortune's Tall Antique Shop. I thought maybe I was still dreaming, that my nightmare had simply gotten more complex. I had taken this same walk countless times, and I had never seen that door. Curiosity got the better of me, and I looked in the window. It seemed normal enough. A relatively small store with a quaint feel to it. Shelves of old antiques and a wooden desk with a clerk behind it. I figured, why not, and went in. It was warm and had a nostalgic smell that I couldn't place. The man behind the desk greeted me with a friendly, "Good morning, sir. Looking for anything in particular?" I responded, "No, thank you. I've just never noticed this store before and figured I'd look." He nodded. "Well, feel free to browse." I thanked him and did just that. I perused the many shelves of what looked like old junk. I couldn't believe that a business like this could exist. Who was buying this stuff? Don't get me wrong, the store was charming in its own way, but I just can imagine many people are buying old roller skates or antique typewriters. After I had walked a loop around the shop, the clerk addressed me again. "It's quite late to be shopping. Most people are asleep by now." I gave him a half-hearted chuckle. Yeah, I couldn't sleep. His question seemed leading, like he was fishing for something. "No? Is this a common occurrence for you?" I was hesitant, but answered truthfully. "Yeah. Nightmares, been having them as long as I can remember." His voice became almost cheerful. "Well, why didn't you start with that? We can offer you the perfect solution." I nearly laughed. I had heard that before, some overpriced herbal tea, a so-called miracle supplement, maybe even a scam. But before I could object, he had placed two objects on the counter in front of me, a long piece of paper and an alarm clock. It looked like one from a movie, with two little bells on the top. He smiled at me, seeing my confusion. "Please, sir, I know what you are thinking. Every customer thinks the same thing at first, but read this first before you do anything." He handed me the paper. It was relatively short. The writing was in black ink, but it looked like it had been handwritten rather than typed. I don't remember it word for word, but it was related to the clock. Basically, the paper said that the clock would cure my nightmares if I followed a sort of ritual with it. It also outlined a price. I looked at him. "Is this a joke or something? A magic clock?" "I assure you it's not a joke," he replied, the smile never shifting from his face. He could see the doubt and annoyance on my face. He responded to it. "Humor me for a moment. You believe I'm lying to you, that the clock is just a clock and the contract is some nonsense I made up. If that is the case, what harm is there? All that will mean is that I'm letting you leave with a free alarm clock. And if you are wrong, I am offering you the best solution you've ever come across for your problem. One guaranteed to work." I paused for a bit. He was right. He wasn't asking anything from me, and the alarm looked nice. If nothing else, it might even be worth something if I could find a collector. But one thing stood out to me. That contract you gave me, it talked about a price. He smiled, seeing that I was at least partly interested. "Ah, yes. You see, in order to get rid of something negative, you'll need to give up something positive. It's only once, and I can promise you it's worth it." Still unclear, I asked. "Something positive? What do you mean?" His tone was smooth as he responded. "Well, the clock will need to take a memory from you, a pleasant one. After that, it will also take away your nightmare." "This is ridiculous," I scoffed. I turned to walk away, but I couldn't. I know it sounds dumb, but again, put yourself in my shoes. I was desperate, and he had been right. It was free. With a sigh, I asked for the clerk's pen. With the same happy voice, he said, "You won't regret it." I signed the paper and took the clock. It felt cold in my hands. The clerk took the contract. He bid me a good night, and I left for home. By now, the sun would be up in only an hour or two, so my test run with the clock would have to wait until the next night. I went through my day, sleep-deprived and moody, until my shift ended and I went home. I didn't even bother with dinner. I showered and went straight to my bedroom. I mentioned earlier that the clock came with a ritual. I suppose that's a bit of a dramatic way to word it. The contract explained that I was to wait until right before I went to bed and then place the clock nearby. Tonight, on the first night I was using the clock, I was supposed to focus on a good memory until I fell asleep. For 2 nights following this, I was to leave the clock there. After, I was to put the clock away until I needed it again, at which point I would repeat the process, excluding the part about focusing on a good memory. That was a one-time thing. I did as the contract said. I put it on my nightstand, got under the covers, and thought of the first time I kissed a girl. It was when I had my first girlfriend in middle school. The kiss was awkward, as I'm sure every first kiss is. Honestly, I didn't mind losing it. I slept better that night than I ever had, even better than when I had been drugged out from surgery. I woke up feeling great. I tried to focus on my memory, but it was foggy, like someone had edited out a part of a video. I knew that information should be there, but it was just missing. I couldn't believe it. That clerk really had been telling the truth. I went about the next 2 days as normal, feeling more energized and happy than I had in a long time. After the third night of using the clock, I took it from the nightstand and put it away in a box in my closet. Still, the nightmares stayed away. My new improved life went on, and I was overjoyed that my suffering had come to an end. This lasted for about a month, at which point the nightmares came back. I again found myself running down that familiar horrible alley from whatever was chasing me. I was saddened that it wasn't permanent, but I didn't let it keep me down. The contract had said that one memory was good for one nightmare, so all I had to do was sleep with it close by again for a few nights and I'd be sleeping peacefully again. I did just that, and it worked like a charm, just as it had before. This time, the nightmares stayed away for twice as long. When they returned, I put the clock back in its place, and there it remained for 2 days. But this time, I figured I'd push the rules a bit. Why should I have to suffer any nightmares? It's a magic clock after all. How bad can breaking one tiny rule be? I decided to leave the clock where it was. Stupid, I know, but I hated that these nightmares were still a part of my life. I felt like they were taunting me, like I hadn't truly beaten them and never would. This felt like a way to kill them in a sense. And there was no trouble, at least not at first. In fact, it worked great. I didn't have nightmares for as long as it stood there. This went on for 2 weeks, when I woke one morning to find a crack in the face of the clock. I didn't think too much of it. It was tiny. I convinced myself it had always been there, but the next day the tiny crack had grown, new fracture points branching out of it like vines. That brings us nearly up to today. You see, recently the clock hasn't been working so well. The nightmares not just back, they last longer and feel more real. It's like my dreams are clips from a movie, and they've always ended just before the climax. But now I'm seeing more of it. I saw it for the first time in my life. The thing that chases me in my dreams. It's hard to believe my imagination conjured this thing up. I've never been particularly creative. It's sort of like a bug, maybe a mantis of some sort, but it's much bigger, easily as tall as a street lamp, and longer too. It has the same claws that a mantis has, razor sharp and reach for me. But its body is more like a horse than a bug, and it's a dark gray color rather than green. Oddly, its head is human. Rather, I should say its heads are human. It's one head that constantly shifts forms and faces. One moment, it's a stern middle-aged man, then a young woman, then a child, then an old man. They all wear different expressions, none positive: pain, sadness, rage, disgust, and their eyes never leave me. That leads me to my current problem. Don't really know how to explain it to you, but I think I'm fading. Each day that passes, I feel like less of myself, like I'm becoming translucent. Physically, I look dimmer, I suppose. My eyes are duller than usual and my hair is lighter. My skin looks clearer too, like I can almost look through myself. Not only that, but mentally and emotionally too. Remembering things is getting harder and harder, and even my emotions feel dull, as if they're only half present. The dreams are affecting me more than usual too. During the day, if I zone out for too long or start to daydream, I find myself being chased down that dirty alleyway again. Even when I'm fully awake, my hair stands on end sometimes, and I have an overwhelming feeling that something is after me, that I need to run. I can hear footsteps behind me when nothing is there, and I often feel exhausted even when I'm sedentary. I took the clock back to the store, but the clerk only showed me my contract. No refunds, no returns. I have no idea where to even start with this. What's happening to me, and how do I stop it? Can someone help me? I originally posted this somewhere else, but it was removed. I'm currently on my 3rd trimester. There's something wrong with my baby. I don't know what to do. I'm terrified. 3 days ago, my ultrasound messed up, or something messed up. The screen was glitching, and I swear it looked like my baby was appearing and then disappearing. According to the ultrasound, I was pregnant. Pregnant. Not pregnant. Pregnant. Not pregnant. However, this was impossible because I was very clearly pregnant. My belly is swollen like a goddamn balloon. I am in my 3rd trimester. I expected the nurse to have some kind of answer, but from the pale look on her face as she performed my ultrasound after once again checking my stomach, a sickly feeling coiled in the pit of my gut. "Sorry," she said, her eyes glued to the display. She had a nervous habit of biting her nails. "I think there's a problem with the output." The nurse called for a technician who arrived quickly and confirmed there was nothing wrong. I caught the frantic look between them, the two of them trying to justify the problem with big words I didn't fully understand. "Oh, it's probably some kind of fault," she said. "It's no problem, it's just the monitor." She tried again when I was getting restless. She kept smiling and laughing, but every time her sharp manicure pricked my belly, I realized she was trembling. The ice-cold jelly on my skin was starting to dry. The nurse applied more, and I had to bite back a hiss. She didn't need more. This woman was stalling for whatever reason, and it was driving me insane. And yet in front of me, I watched him disappear from view. I had been in love with my son ever since I first saw him. He was my baby. All right, she began the scan once more, and my baby appeared again. Pregnant. Not pregnant. The nurse's smile faded. "I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand," she whispered, checking and rechecking the monitor. "Your son was just in this position." She prodded at a printout, her hands visibly shaking, but now he's She never finished her sentence, chewing on her thumbnail. "Alex, can you call the technician again?" she asked the male assistant, who, until that moment, had been staring at my belly with wide eyes. He blinked, running his hands through his hair. He was young for an assistant, maybe a little older than me. I had to wonder why he chose this job when all he did was stare at women's bellies like a fucking alien was about to rip through my stomach. Yes," he said, nodding like he understood, but he was still staring at me, his gaze flitting back and forth between the screen and my stomach. He was staring down at the printouts of my ultrasound, flipping through them. Before he left, though, the assistant paused in the doorway. I could see him very obviously on his phone. "Alex," the nurse scolded, and he scurried away, muttering a quick, "Sorry." I took the opportunity to sit up, nausea twisting in my gut. I pulled down my shirt, cringing at the feeling of the dried jelly still staining my skin. "I'm sorry, is there some kind of problem?" I managed to get out through my teeth. My 3rd trimester had been bearable so far. I'm only 21, and my pregnancy was a mistake, but I wanted to keep him. His father ran off the second I told him I was pregnant. But my baby was something I could hold on to. It wasn't ideal being in college and pregnant. He didn't want anything to do with our son. I wasn't even told what the irregularities were. But when I was told there were irregularities and that I would need extra scans, I felt like my world was ending. The people I lived with were all students, but they did their best to be the best aunts and uncles, clearing out the spare room for my son. I was so thankful for them. Whatever that meant. According to the nurses at the clinic, something was strange about my son's position. "Look, all I want is to be a mommy. I've known that since I was a little kid. I was so close to seeing my son, and yet on the screen in front of me, the stupid scanner wouldn't even display my baby. He was there, and then he wasn't. I was pregnant, and then I wasn't according to the screen. After almost an hour of what I can only describe as either me losing my mind or the people who were supposed to be looking after me being completely incompetent, I was at my limit. Being in that room was becoming unbearable. Once the nurse and her assistant were sure the monitor was actually working, she scanned me again, and to my delight, there he was, stable on the screen this time. He looked fine. I could have sobbed. My son looked like any other baby should at 30 weeks. He looked healthy. He looked fine. Trust me, I've been driving myself crazy asking ChatGPT/Google a multitude of questions concerning my baby's growth. So I couldn't understand why my nurse looked so pale. Initially, her dark hair was pinned into a ponytail. She had gone through 3 different hairstyles since I entered the room. But the more sickly she looked, the more I noticed her unconsciously tearing it out, ripping out the ponytail, leaving it hanging in her face, and then twisting it into a side plait. "Is he okay?" I broke the silence, swallowing my own cry of doubt. Her expressions were off-putting. It's like she looked like she wanted to run, but she was staring at my belly, her bottom lip wobbling. The nurse turned to me with a wide, definitely fake smile. I think she was about to say something along the lines of, "Yes, your baby is perfectly healthy." I was used to my belly moving like that, but apparently, according to her, it was abnormal. Ever since I got pregnant, or more appropriately, started to show, I began to notice my stomach inflating and deflating. I figured it was normal, but now I wasn't sure. The nurse was still staring, unblinking, and she looked like she might speak. Then Alex, who had been standing in the doorway on his phone, collapsed. I don't think the nurse saw the way his body twitched, his eyes flickering. He was staring at his phone, clearly trying to keep it out of view before his whole face went slack. The nurse had her back turned, searching for my medical notes. He just dropped to the ground, his eyeballs rolling back. The guy wasn't even unconscious. "Alex." The nurse pulled him onto her lap, gently slapping his face. I think the two of us were too startled to react, before she snapped out of it and hurried over. I sat up to try and help, and my son kicked, this time violently, hard enough to make me feel like I was going to puke. Alex was still awake, but his eyes were half-lidded, rolling back in their sockets, his lips parted like he was trying to speak. "Alex? Hey, sweetie, can you look at me?" The nurse whispered, her voice shaking when she called out to her colleagues. "Call an ambulance." I'm a ranger at Crooked Pines. 1 month ago, something took my bones. It was a big one, probably 400 pounds, but it looked like a deflated balloon. Its hide sagged over the earth, limp and bloodless. It looked like something had reached inside and scooped out everything that should have been holding it up. No bullet holes, no claw marks, just skin and muscle, untouched but empty. I found the bear just after dawn. I crouched down, gloved fingers prodding the limp flesh. The whole thing felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. I'd been working as a park ranger for almost 2 decades. That means I've seen everything from drunk teenagers to people out looking to make a few extra bucks hunting out of season, but this wasn't poaching. This is Ranger Powell reporting a carcass on the north end of Crooked Pines. I've got a bear, adult male, no external wounds, but I swallowed. It's been deboned, completely. I grabbed my radio. Static hissed, followed by the scratchy voice of Ranger Gibson. "Repeat that last part, Powell." A long pause. "Copy that. Sit tight. You'll run it up the chain." I said, "It's been deboned." I didn't sit tight. No way I was sticking around with an inside-out bear. I snapped a few pictures, sent them to my supervisor, and marked the GPS coordinates before heading back toward base camp. Crooked Pines was deep country. Real old, real quiet. The kind of place where sound didn't carry right. This was my 3rd season patrolling these woods. I used to be stationed further south toward Aaron Creek. I'd seen weird shit before since coming to Crooked Pines. A deer stripped of its flesh but left standing upright. Trees with fresh, gaping wounds that leaked thick, clotted sap. Once I found a pile of elk teeth, all stacked neat in the middle of the trail like some kind of offering. But this? God almighty. This was something else. My coworker is jealous of my relationship with his office crush. He's making my life a living hell. No one liked Michael from accounting, and I mean no one. People wouldn't go out of their way to be a jerk to him, but he didn't have any real office buddies either. He just gave off this air about him, like he thought he was better than everyone else, but he didn't have any reason to think that, so all he could do was stew and pick apart people's every move in some egotistical attempt to undermine them. Yeah, he's that type of guy. I was always careful to stay out of his way. The dude reeked of BOA, and he always glowered at me as I walked past his desk. I tried saying hi to him once. no cigar. He just glared at me even harder until I got uncomfortable and left. All that to say, I wouldn't exactly go above and beyond to interact with Michael, but I was never a dick to him either. But unfortunately for me, that's not how he took it when I started talking to Kara. The first time I noticed it was at the office Christmas party. Don't look now, but Michael is staring daggers at you, Kara said, raising her cup to her lips. I didn't listen. I immediately turned and looked. Kara was right. Michael was standing alone in the corner, brooding. He had his arms crossed, one foot against the wall, and he was glaring directly at me. He wasn't even trying to hide it. Eehee. Yeah, that's not creepy at all, I said, sweat beading atop my brow. Kara awkwardly giggled in response. The tension in the air was thicker than butter. I think I'm gonna say something to him, I muttered, breaking the silence. Kara's eyes grew wide. Dom, I don't think that's such a good idea. Michael's a weirdo. We should probably just ignore him. I sighed. She was right. Confronting Michael would only stir the pot, but even so, I felt like I needed to speak up. If he had a grudge against me, I wanted to know. It'll only take a second. Don't worry, I'm not going to provoke him. I'm just going to ask him to stop staring. I could see the worry behind Kara's eyes dissipate slightly, but I could tell that she was still concerned. Okay, just be smart about it. I nodded and began walking toward Michael, who remained perched against the wall like a fixture. Even though he knew that I was approaching him, he didn't avert his gaze. In fact, I think he started scowling at me harder. Hey Mike, I said, trying to choose words carefully. Just want to make sure everything's cool between us. Kara thought you were staring at her or something, but she's probably just overreaching. Stay away from her. My mouth fell open. The way he'd said it caught me off guard. His demand was laced with a deep hatred, venom seeping through his clenched teeth. Excuse me? Michael's burning eyes locked with mine, and for a moment I felt small, weak, like I was completely at his mercy. You heard me. Stay away from Kara. If you don't, I am going to unleash a hell the likes of which you can never even begin to grasp. I shook my head as a deep-seated rage bubbled within me. Look man, I was trying to be nice about this, but you're taking it too far. Who are you to tell me who I can and can't talk to? Kara and I both think you're a creep. Leave us alone. Fine, Michael said, folding his arms across his chest and leaning back against the wall. You leave me no choice. Whatever, dude. Bye. And with that, I walked back to Kara, leaving Michael posing like the wannabe anime villain that he surely thought he was. It goes without saying that the rest of the Christmas party had been ruined. Michael kept staring, and even though I doubted he would actually do anything, his threat lingered at the back of my mind like a plague. As it turned out, I was right to worry. Weeks passed, and Kara and I grew closer by the day. I hadn't heard so much as a peep from Michael, just more wrathful glares whenever I passed by his cubicle. Things had been going smoothly. I'd finally met a girl who liked me, and my life had never been better. I finally felt like I was truly happy, until I had another run-in with Michael. Domenic. A nasally voice called my name as I was packing up to leave for the weekend. I mentally rolled my eyes. I didn't even have to glance up to know who it was. Hey Mike, I said, pursing my lips and continuing to gather my belongings. Michael wore a shit-eating grin. I didn't know why he was smiling at me, but I didn't like it. This is your final warning, Dominic. Leave Kara alone, or the fun will begin, Michael said, his chapped lips splitting apart to reveal rows of jagged teeth that looked as if they hadn't seen a toothbrush since 2014. Screw off, dude. I already told you that's not happening. I was hoping you'd say that, he replied, rubbing his hands together like a cartoonish antagonist. I cringed. Hard. I am going to make you suffer, he said, beginning to cackle. And I am going to HR. Seriously, get a life. Michael scoffed, pushed his glasses further up his hooked nose, and slunk away without so much as another word. I breathed a sigh of relief, hoping that my threat had worked. Little did I know, I had only poked the bear. That evening, my mother went missing. Dad could have sworn that she was upstairs in the bath, humming a soft tune to herself when it just stopped. After 30 minutes of complete silence, he'd gone to check on her only to realize that she was gone. I couldn't believe the news. Mom wasn't the kind to just run off without telling anyone, and surely Dad would have noticed her walking out the door. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could someone be there 1 minute, then disappear into thin air the next? I called off from work the next week to comfort Dad and help him search. I was taking it hard, but he was nearly inconsolable. The police were no help. In fact, I think they suspected that we had something to do with it. The whole thing made me sick to my stomach. I just wanted Mom to come home safely. By the time I returned to work, I felt like a shell of my former self. Kara tried her best to reassure me that everything would be fine, but what could she really do? The only thing that could take my pain away was for my mother to be found alive and well. That's why the note that appeared on my desk after I got back from lunch immediately caught my attention. I know where your mother is. Meet me behind the dumpster at 4:15 sharp. My mind raced with possibilities. Who had written this? Did they really know where Mom was, or was it all some disgusting prank? Whatever the case, I had to get to the bottom of it. My heart nearly exploded with anticipation as I rounded the corner. The dumpster was at the far end of the parking lot. It was surrounded by a large wooden fence, which offered the most inconspicuous spot for shady activity. I should have guessed who I'd find waiting for me. Nishiel. I think a part of me knew that I'd find him there, leaning against the wall, trying to act cool and mysterious. But still, something about seeing him there, of all people, twisted my stomach into knots. My sworn enemy was the last person I wanted to talk to at that moment. Why? Hello, Dominic, Michael said, grinning at me with those dirty yellow teeth. What are you doing here? I croaked, my head starting to spin. Weren't expecting to find me here, were you? Yes. I can see why you would be confused, he said, hands behind his back as he began to saunter over to me. I realized that I may not look intimidating to a mere save me the monologue. Where's Mom? I spat through clenched teeth. He was acting like this was all some messed up game. A trivial punishment for crossing him. Something about his behavior ignited a fire in me, and Maciel noticed. Feeling a bit feisty now, are we? Well, all will come to light, just you wait. I know what happened to your mother, Dominic. Cease your relations with Kara and I might consider. Slam. In a bout of rage, I shoved Michael hard against the wooden fence. Are you fucking kidding me? All this just because you're jealous of me and Kara. Give me back my mother, or I swear, I'll knock out every tooth in your deformed skull and force each of them down your throat one by one. I raised a fist and watched as Michael cowered down like the worm he was. Okay, fine. Here's the coordinates, he said, wincing as I lowered my hand. He scurried away the moment I took my eyes off him, scuttling into the driver's seat of an idling Honda Civic that I somehow missed entirely. Michael didn't even bother shouting an insult. The only thing I heard as I stood there, staring in shock at the crumpled piece of paper in my hand, was the screeching of tires as he peeled away. I obviously raced to the coordinates the second that I snapped out of it. I didn't know what I would find when I arrived, but it definitely wasn't what was waiting for me. The warehouse was about a 20-minute drive away. The sun still hadn't set when I got there, but it was low enough to splash the sky with an intoxicating pink tint. That scene stuck out in my mind as I pulled into the empty lot. Once I parked, I took a deep breath, steeled my resolve, and stepped outside. I walked up to the weather-beaten, rusted building and prepared for the worst. Michael had given me a way to find my mother. He never guaranteed me that she was alive. I slid open the door, heart in my throat. My eyes grew wide and my vision grew hazy when I drank in the scene before me. Mom wasn't there. No one was. The warehouse was completely empty, save for a single lawn chair sitting in the center of the room. A flood of emotions surged through me. Rage, betrayal, defeat. They all coalesced within me like a nauseating cocktail. Had Michael really gone through the trouble of finding the perfect place to hide someone just to lead me on a wild goose chase? I was fuming, ready to track the slimy weasel down and beat him into next week, when a thought flashed across my mind. The chair. Why would someone leave a single lawn chair in the middle of a seemingly abandoned warehouse? The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Fueled by curiosity, I tentatively approached it, illuminated solely by the sliver of light seeping in through the partially open door. Once I was standing directly above it, I noticed a piece of paper lying face down on the chair's surface. When I flipped it over, I nearly passed out right then and there. Have you heard from your father lately? All the color drained from my face. That bastard. He couldn't have. I immediately pulled out my phone and tried calling Dad's number as I sprinted to my car. No dice. The phone just kept ringing and ringing until it went to voicemail. I flew out of that parking lot like a bat out of hell. I raced down highways and main roads going well above the legal limit, fortunate enough to have avoided any run-ins with the cops. Once I skidded to a halt in front of my parents' house. I slammed the car into park and leapt out, praying that I would burst through that door to find my father where he always was. at that time of day, sitting in his favorite armchair, reading a novel before dinner. But that's not what I found. I shoved the door open and I was greeted by an empty house. All the lights were off, and by that point, I was starting to feel nauseous. I just knew that Michael had taken my father from me too. "D-Dad," I called out, my voice quaking as tears welled in my eyes. I knew it was futile, but I had to try. A deep pit began to form in my chest when I was met with nothing but silence. I loved my parents dearly and I'd be completely lost without them there to guide me. Click. I was suddenly ripped from my train of thought by the sound of the lamp by the sofa flicking on. It bathed the room in light, illuminating my worst nightmare. Michael was sitting on my parents' couch. The smug grin plastered on his face sent a chill creeping down my spine. "You, what did you do to my parents?" I growled, glaring at Michael with a hatred stronger than I'd ever felt towards anyone. "Who? Your parents? Oh, you mean Steve and Linda. Quite pleasant people if I do." "Stop with the games," I seethed, taking a couple of aggressive steps toward him. Not so fast," Michael said, opening the lid of a laptop that had been lying beside him. "Take one more step, and you'll meet the same fate as your parents." I paused, wary of his threat. My voice quivered as I struggled to form a coherent sentence. "And what fate is that?" Michael's grin widened just a little. What he said next chilled me to my core. "Your parents were deleted, Dominic. Wiped from existence by a program of my creation." My eyes grew wide. That wasn't possible. He had to be lying. "You see, I had a recent breakthrough, Dominic. A discovery that fundamentally disproves science as we know it. Through a variety of tests and a bit of luck, I have discovered that all matter is made up of binary code. It's not visible, but it's there, and it makes up all of us. Everything. All matter, living or dead. I've developed a program that can take an object-specific line of code and mine us poof. Delete it. Gone. Like it never existed in the first place." All I could do was stare. If what Michael was saying was true, then had he... "That's impossible. I don't believe you. Tell me where my parents are, you freak." What he was saying couldn't be true. That monster had kidnapped Mom and Dad, and I was determined to find them. "I thought you might say that," Michael grinned, turning his attention to the laptop. What? What are you doing?" His fingers flurried across the keys. I didn't even have a chance to react before he smirked at me maliciously. "You're about to find out." Michael pressed the enter key and I suddenly crashed to the floor. I was dazed, but once I recovered, I tried to scramble back to my feet, but I couldn't. I glanced down, dread pumping through my veins like venom. I felt all the color drain from my face, and I immediately understood why I couldn't stand back up. My left leg was missing, not hidden from view, not invisible. It was just gone. "Why? Why are you doing this to me?" I croaked, still shocked by the sight of my missing appendage. Michael scoffed. "I told you to leave Kara alone. You didn't do that, so now I'm removing you from the picture." I glowered up at him. I had never despised anyone more than the man staring back at me. "All this over a girl who doesn't even look in your direction. She'll never go for you. You're fucking delusional." "That may be true, but I doubt she'll stick around for a man with no legs either." I looked down again, consumed by fear. Just like Michael had implied, my right leg was missing, and a pool of crimson was blossoming at my pelvis. Michael smirked. He looked giddier than a child on Christmas morning. "This really is a shame, Dominic. I gave you a chance to do better, but you didn't. You had your shot and you blew it. I know that Kara is out of my league, but as the old adage goes, if I can't have her, no one can. That's how I ended up here, bleeding out on my living room floor with this freak show reveling in my suffering. I can call for help, or Michael is going to delete the rest of me, just like he did to my parents. Either way, I'm going to be joining them soon enough. I'm already getting dizzy from the blood loss. I'm sharing this as a warning. Michael thinks no one will believe me, but I swear I'm not lying. I have to get this out so that someone knows. Once I'm gone, there won't be any evidence to tie him to the crime, and I won't be his last victim. Please, heed my warning. If you have a coworker who claims to have the ability to erase people from existence, don't blow them off, because there's a chance that they might be telling the truth." The man with the flashlight. I was 11 years old when it happened. The kind of age where you're still naive enough to believe the world is safe, but just old enough to start feeling the chill of things that don't quite make sense. It was around 7:30 p.m. when my mom, my older sister, and I were on our way back from my friend Asher's birthday party. The night had already settled in, and the streetlights flickered on as we passed down familiar roads. We had to make a quick stop at our old apartment complex. My mom was helping her friend, who had just moved into a new place, unpack with her babies, Echo and Ether. So we pulled up, parked, and got out to lend a hand. My sister was busy with some boxes, and I was tasked with carrying the baby's potty training toilet down the outdoor stairs. The kind of errand that would have been boring on any other day, but tonight, it felt different. I walked outside, my shoes tapping on the cold cement stairs as I descended. The night air felt heavier than usual, like it was pressing in on me. But what really struck me as strange was the flickering beam of a flashlight bouncing on the walls of the stairwell, illuminating the dark space like someone was searching for something. I froze. At the bottom of the stairs, standing next to an old beaten-up car, was a man. His face was hidden by the darkness, but I could make out his silhouette. His posture was strange. He didn't move at first, just stood there with his head slightly tilted down, as if looking at the ground, but there was no reason for it. The moment I saw him, I felt a prickling sensation crawl up my spine. I tried to ignore him and keep walking, but the man lifted his flashlight, its beam shooting in my direction. He was watching me now, like he was waiting for something. He didn't say a word. My legs stiffened and I quickly ran back up the stairs, clutching the potty training toilet in my arms like it was some kind of shield. I reached the top, breathing a little too hard for comfort, and I found my mom still unpacking in the parking lot. "Mom," I said, my voice a little shaky, "there's someone down there, he's just standing there, staring at me." My mom looked up at me with a faint smile, too distracted with the move to really register the panic in my voice. "Oh, don't worry about it," she said, brushing it off. "That's just our old neighbor Jerry. He's always out here fixing his car." "But Mom, he didn't look normal. He was just staring at me, like he didn't even blink." I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the whole situation. But my mom wasn't listening. She turned back to the boxes, waving her hand dismissively. "He's harmless. Don't make a big deal out of it. He's just doing his thing, fixing up that old car of his." I watched my mom walk off, but I couldn't shake the image of the man, still standing there, his body rigid like some kind of mannequin. I hesitated before walking back down the stairs to finish my chore. And then, I saw it. He had gotten out of the car. At first I thought he was going to walk toward me, but no, he didn't move at all. He just stood there by the side of the car, his hands fiddling with something under the hood. The flashlight was still in his hand, swinging side to side as he pretended to fix the car, but the whole scene felt wrong. His motions were stiff, almost mechanical. I walked faster, eager to get back to the safety of my mom's side. As I turned around and looked at the man one more time, I noticed something that sent a shiver down my spine. His head was tilted slightly, like he was watching me again, but now there was something more than curiosity in his gaze. It was like he was waiting for something, maybe me. I didn't wait to find out. I hurried back to the car, my heart racing. But when I looked over my shoulder one last time, I noticed something strange. The car was empty now. There was no sign of Jerry or whatever his name was. He had disappeared completely, vanished into the night without a trace. We left soon after, and I tried to convince myself that my mom was right, that it was just some weird, eccentric neighbor who liked to stand around late at night fixing his car. But every time I close my eyes and remember the way that man's head tilted down, the way he stared without blinking, I can't shake the feeling that he wasn't just some neighbor at all. To this day, I wonder if he was really waiting for me, if maybe something about that night wasn't just a coincidence. Sometimes when I drive past that old apartment complex, I can't help but glance over, half expecting to see him standing there in the shadows, flashlight in hand, watching, waiting. Maybe you'll never know. But one thing's for sure, I haven't been able to look at a flashlight the same way again. I think there's something wrong with my mirror. I live alone. It's a quiet existence, for the most part, just me, my apartment, and the occasional visit from family or friends who never seem to stay long enough to make it feel like home. I'm used to the solitude. It's comfortable in a way. There's a mirror in the hallway right next to the bathroom door. It's an old thing, a relic from when I first moved in. The previous tenant must have left it behind, and after a couple of weeks of hesitation, I decided to hang it up. It didn't seem important at the time. A mirror's a mirror, right? Just something you glance in to check your appearance. Nothing more. But recently, something's been off. At first, it was subtle. Little things I shrugged off as tricks of the light or my own tired mind. I'd catch glimpses of myself in the reflection when walking past. Sometimes my reflection seemed to linger a fraction longer than it should, or the angle would be off, like the mirror was playing with the image. Last night it happened again. I was getting ready for bed, the usual routine: brush my teeth, change into pajamas, turn off the lights. As I passed by the hallway mirror on my way to my bedroom, I looked up, and that's when I saw it. My reflection wasn't mine. It was still me, of course, but there was something wrong. My reflection was distorted, a shadow, not quite right. The way it moved, the way it stood, it was as if it were mimicking me, but with a slight delay, as though it was watching me before responding. I stopped in my tracks, staring at it, my pulse racing. At first, I thought it was just the dim lighting playing tricks on me. Maybe I was just exhausted. I turned around and walked away, but the feeling didn't go. I could feel my own reflection pulling at me, like it was still there, staring at me from the corner of my eye. I've been avoiding it since. I don't walk past it unless I absolutely have to. And even then, I make sure to keep my eyes forward because something about it just doesn't feel right. The worst part, I think it's watching me now. The reflection in the mirror doesn't just mimic my movements anymore. It feels like it knows what I'm gonna do before I do it. When I stand in front of it, it smiles before I do. It raises its eyebrows, tilts its head, and sometimes even gives me a look like it knows a secret I'm too scared to learn. The other night, I couldn't sleep. The apartment was dead silent, except for the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. I found myself standing in front of the mirror again. I don't even remember walking up to it, but there I was staring into it, just watching. I looked at myself, trying to steady my breath, but then I saw it. The reflection wasn't smiling anymore. It was grinning, wide and unnaturally, the edges of its mouth stretching too far, too wide, like it was made of something that wasn't flesh. I froze. I didn't move. I didn't want to. I was too scared to blink, to turn away. The reflection's eyes were locked on me, wide and unblinking, and I swear to God I could feel its gaze even when I closed my own eyes. That's when I saw it, a shadow, blacker than the night around it, creeping in from the sides of the mirror. At first it was just a sliver, but as I watched, it grew, stretching across the surface like some kind of crawling thing, something that didn't belong in the reflection. I turned and bolted for my bedroom, heart pounding in my chest. I tried to forget it. I convinced myself it was a trick of the light, some weird hallucination, maybe even a late-night panic attack. But now, every time I look at that hallway mirror, I feel like it's looking back at me, watching me. Last night, I couldn't sleep again. I had to pee, so I got up, and there I was, standing in front of the damn mirror once more. I looked up against my better judgment, and I saw it again, the grin. But this time, it wasn't just the reflection grinning. The face in the mirror shifted. It changed, slowly, grotesquely, until it wasn't my face at all. It was something else. A hollow-eyed version of me, but something darker, more twisted. This when I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just reflecting me. It wanted to be me. The reflection started moving on its own, no longer mimicking me. It was doing its own thing. It raised a hand. No, it was reaching for me. It started tapping the glass, slowly, methodically. The sound was soft at first, like a knock, then louder, more insistent, and then I saw it. The reflection stepped forward, as if trying to climb out of the mirror. I don't know how long I stood there, but it felt like hours. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, the only sound in the world besides the tapping. I don't even remember how I got back to my bedroom, but when I woke up this morning, I knew something had changed. The reflection in the hallway mirror is different now. It's more alive. It moves when I don't. It smiles when I don't. It watches. Waits. I don't want to go near it again. I don't even want to look in its direction, but it's there, just across the hall, and it's always waiting for me. I don't know how long I have before it gets me, but I know it's coming. And when it does, I'm afraid I'll be nothing but a shadow in the glass. I think it's already started. The reflection doesn't just move on its own anymore. It feels like it's pulling me in. And I don't know how much longer I can resist. The corpse of the horse. The morning of March 6th was the moment my world got turned upside down. It was a Thursday morning, colder than usual, an inch or so of snow still avoiding its inevitable fate. I woke up groggy, with the only cure being a hot cup of coffee. As I walk into the kitchen, there it was. The rotting corpse of a horse. I was immediately shocked out of my daze. A horse. On my kitchen table, I circled the corpse. It was in a state of decay, its skin and flesh peeling off the bones. Its skull was fully exposed. Empty, dark circles that were once called eyes stared back at me, straight into my soul. I fumble around with the lock of my door as I rush out into the stairwell of my apartment, still in my pajamas. I knocked on the door of my neighbor to no answer. Must have left for work already. As I re-enter the room, the stench finally hits me. I gag as the warm scent of blood and rot make it to my nostrils. I made my way to every single one of the windows in my apartment and opened them. It is then that I finally decide to call the police. I had some time to myself to think in the time the cops arrived. One awful thought kept creeping into my mind. All my doors and windows were locked. How did it get in? The officers finally arrived while I was waiting in the stairwell. I couldn't bear the smell, the sight, or the implications of that thing. I went through all the details with them, signed some paperwork, and they were off, having called in some bio-waste cleaners. It was more than nothing, but since they didn't see any sign of forced entire, there wasn't a lot they could do. I was left with the horse again. I couldn't leave home since I had to wait for the bio-waste team, and I couldn't really sit in the cold stairwell all day. So, with a clothespin on my nose, I went about my day as normally as I could. I tried to keep my gaze away from the rotting pile of meat and bones on my dinner table. I really did, but every time I passed by the horse to go to the bathroom or get some water, its lifeless stare would burn into the back of my skull. An hour had passed with no sign of the bio-waste team, though it felt way longer. As I got up from my desk to take a leak, the absurdity of the situation finally set in. A fucking horse? And a dead one at that. Why? How? Why me? I decided to do something. I couldn't just sit on my ass while the horse juices get absorbed by my imported walnut table. I was going to clean the horse up myself. The soulless eye sockets of the horse stared at me relentlessly as I grabbed the serrated knife from the kitchen counter. Was meaning to get a new one anyways. I started with the limbs. The knife went through the flesh and skin as if it was butter. The most disgusting butter known to man. The blade stopped up when I got to the bones, so I had to put some more elbow grease into it. An hour or two had passed and there still was no sign of the cleanup crew, but luckily I had done their job. I had put the body parts of the horse into garbage bags. I double layered them just to make sure. It took me another 30 minutes to carry all of them down to the garbage dunks. I took the head down last, just so I could take one last look at its hollow eyes before saying goodbye forever. Call it morbid, but I'm just a sentimental person. Once all the parts were successfully in the trash, I made my way up, hoping that I could get the stench out within the afternoon. Those plans were quickly thrown out, as the horse was back on the kitchen table, exactly as it was before. Well, not exactly. The places where I had sawed through the limbs and neck had seemingly healed, to the point where it didn't look rotten at all. I couldn't take it anymore. All the hours and effort I had put into getting rid of this pile of rotten bones, just for it to find its way back into my life. As its mocking black void stared at me, rage filled my body. I punched it. I punched the corpse right between its eyes, and then again, and then again. Blood and gore were spraying onto my beautiful baby blue walls and kitchen cabinets. Skull fragments dug into my knuckles as I kept the punches coming. My white shirt quickly turned to a deep crimson. The corpse was just a pile of goop by the time I was interrupted by a knock on the door. Covered in blood and brains, I opened the door. "Hi," I asked sheepishly. "Bio-waste management, we were told about your horse problem. Can I come in?" The towering man asked firmly, not even looking up from his clipboard. No, my answer came out more firm than intended. He looked up from his clipboard now with a puzzled face, which quickly turned to horror as he saw me. "Leave," I continued with my newfound moxie as I attempted to slam the door in his face, which his foot blocked. "Son, I'm here to help. What happened?" "I said leave," I shouted while kicking his foot out of the way and locking the door. With my heart pounding in my throat, I returned to the depths of my apartment. I could not let them see what I had done. They'd think I was a psychopath. However, I had more pressing matters to attend to. In my kitchen stood the horse, and not the pile of flesh and gore, not the corpse. No, he was as healthy as well a horse. For just a moment we stood there, those black voids replaced by pools of crimson as the sun hit the eyes of the beast. We stared at each other. For just a moment, a calm before the storm, and then the moment ended. The beast charged at me, full speed. I dodged it with not even a millisecond to spare. I fell to the floor as the horse rammed into the wall. The man in the mirror isn't me. One might consider it an irrational fear, but I have always wondered if I am the same person in the morning as the one who went to sleep the night before. When I close my eyes, it feels like a blink that severs time, hours slipping away, lost to the void of sleep. What happens during those forgotten moments? The bathroom light flickers on as I sloth walk inside. Wrapping my hands around the cool porcelain sink, I stare into the face, looking back at me in the mirror, holding my gaze with it. Long shadows stretch from its brow, shrouding the finer details of its face. I tilt my head to the left. It follows perfectly in sync, but a part of me feels it lingers behind, like watching a movie with the dialogue just slightly delayed. I pull my comb from the glass cup on the left side of the tap, sculpting my hair like the hands of the maker. The movements seem like mine, yet they feel rehearsed. Gently, I begin brushing my teeth. My eyes track the reflections, trying to catch the person behind the glass off guard. I gargle and spit out the remnants of the paste, cracking a smile into my expression. The stranger mimics me too, but it doesn't quite fit. Slowly, I inch out of the bathroom, dragging my feet across the carpeted floor, its beige fluff leaving footprints behind me like trampling through snow. Just at the edge of my peripherals, I notice a picture frame, my wife and me, standing in front of the ocean upon the shimmering beaches of the southern sea. Her golden blonde hair seems to blow in a non-existent wind, with a smile brighter than the summer sun we had stood beneath that day. The picture is the only warmth offered in the cold, unlit room with curtains perpetually drawn. Has it really been a year? I whisper to myself before stepping through the front door. A year since she left? A flash of yellow from the car's headlights stretches across the driveway as I walk toward it, illuminating my path like a ship at sea guided by a lonely lighthouse. I open the door and climb inside, turning the key to awaken the sleeping metal bull. As it rises from its peaceful rest, the radio springs to life alongside it, filling the silence. I turn the volume up, drowning out thoughts of her with the chatter of the morning hosts. Driving to work would pressure even a saint into a scornful rage. This system, this automaton we all turn for like cogs in a machine, feels built more like a torturer's dungeon. And this labyrinth of twisted roads, with cars screeching like insects, crawling over each other to reach their desired destinations, this is the hell we endure every day, until the moment we are lowered into the eternal embrace of our Mother Earth. The mindless act of pressing the brake pad up and down propels me into the chasm of thought, an escape from the massacre of the soul. My body and I remain at a distance, tethered by an invisible thread. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a man staring at me, yanking me back into reality. His gaze is unshakable. His eyes never blink. Not a single glimmer of humanity ripples across his stiff face. No twitch, no subtle movement of muscle. A personified statue wrapped in human skin is the best I can describe. I rotate my head away, cutting him from view, only to be met by another man and a woman, side by side, sharing the same face as the man beside me. Their jaws hang open as if they are screaming, but no sound emanates. The traffic light flips to green. I floor the accelerator, launching the vehicle forward, doing my best to forget the ethereal encounter. Eventually, I arrive at work, put my car into park, and practically run for the office. My shirt clings to my back, soaked with sweat from the car seat as I enter. Overhead, the fluorescent lights buzz like a swarm of irritated wasps. The office reeks of burnt coffee and cheap imitations of expensive perfume. As I walk through the workspace with chairs neatly rowed on either side, shaped like eggs laid by some monstrous prehistoric bird, the company receptionist sits before me, tapping away at her keyboard. She pulls her attention from the ghostly glow of the monitor, her eyes catching mine, the faint text of an email list reflected in the lower part of her glasses. "Good morning, Miles. How you doing today?" she asks, her tone an exact replica of the day before, high-pitched, unlike her actual voice. "I'm doing all right. Hanging in there," I reply, forcing the words through a strained throat. She leans back in her chair, rotating slightly, tilting her head to the left while clasping her hands together. "That's good to hear. Interesting weather we're having, hey. The clouds are so dark and eerie, wouldn't you say? Much like the rest of this place. It's like walking into a crypt," I respond, my tone harsher than intended. She giggles, whether out of politeness or sincerity, I can't say. I walk past her. Faces pass me by, familiar, yet as distant as strangers brushing past on the street. I know the occupants of this building about as well as they know me, which is to say, not at all. A translucent kettle greets me in the kitchen, already filled with water. I flick it on like a light switch, summoning a blue glow from within. As the temperature begins to rise, I reach for my mug in its usual corner of the cupboard. It stands out among the others, printed with an image of my dog, a wire fox terrier, looking like a heap of snow shoveled to the side in the dead of winter. He wears a bright red collar, a gift from my wife, adorned with a diamond-shaped tag, like a medal of the highest honor. I pour the coffee into my beloved cup and head up the towering staircase to the company's main office space. Booting up my laptop, I watch as it wakes alongside me, the coffee beginning to take effect. The slump of morning starts to fade, the fog in my mind replaced by a thought train with clear rails ahead. The door behind me clicks open. My manager walks in and comes to my side. "Hey Miles, how are you doing today?" he says, with an exaggerated smile. Good. Nothing I can necessarily complain about." He offers his hand, and from my seated position, I grip it. His eyebrow twitches slightly, pressing against the muscles in his forehead before he turns away, retreating to his wall of stark black monitors. From there, he watches me like an all-seeing eldritch horror. "Remember, we're being pressed for those new illustrations, so I need you to push them out. We've got more things cooking in the back, and we can't have you messing around anymore." "Understood," he says, hidden behind his fortress, barking orders like a mad king commanding his servants. I feel the heat beneath my skin rise, but quickly, I smother the fire before it spreads. "Not here, not now. It's not the time or place," I mutter to myself. The rest of my coworkers begin to trickle in, one by one, all offering the same good mornings, all echoing my manager, down to the exact mannerisms, savoring that same condescending tone. Finally, the parade of greetings and handshakes dies down, allowing me to turn back and continue my work in peace. Hours creep by, dragging themselves into what feels like weeks. Not a word exchanged between me and anyone else, just the way I prefer it. And yet, guilt drips in slowly, whispering that I'll never truly know the person seated right beside me. Eventually, after what feels like years, the hands of the clock reach up to lunch hour. Like cattle, we all rise from our seats, shuffling into the kitchen to retrieve our meals, tracing the footprints carved out by yesterday's rut. I retrieve my pasta from the cold, low-humming fridge and turn to sit at the counter, listening to the flow of ordinary, monotonous conversation. "So how is your cat doing today?" one smartly dressed woman says to another. "Oh, same grouchy energy as usual," the other replies. "Still wearing that cone around its head?" the first asks, flicking her curled hair behind her back. It falls perfectly into place, forming bronze rings and silver tunnels. "Yeah, always knocking into doorways," the second says. "Where did you get your hair done, by the way?" The first woman ignites to life. "Well, you know Jenner from across the street, right? Well, she..." Their voices begin to blur together, transforming into something unintelligible, just noise filling the space. But it keeps my mind distracted as I chomp away at my nearly week-old pasta. It tastes plain. The grated cheese masks it somewhat, but the lack of seasoning is obvious. Still, I keep chewing, watching the pasta slowly vanish, piece by piece. My mind drifts away from the scripted dialogue of the two women, returning to the memory of the staring man, his unblinking gaze. It still makes no sense. Why would he do that? It was like he was peering into my soul, judging every thought, the ones I had then, and even the ones from a year ago. I don't know how I received that impression, but it just seemed to click. Lingering on the thought, I lifted my fork, stabbed the final piece of pasta, and gently raised it to my mouth. "Hey, Miles." The sound of my name wrapped around me like fishhooks sinking into bait, familiar, unwanted. I set my fork down, slow and steady, not bothering to turn toward the voice. I already knew what was coming. Same hour, same questions. "How've you been?" The bronze-haired woman's voice rang clear, soft, careful, sincerity dripping from every syllable. "All right, I guess." A simple question, deserving of an equally simple answer. "Good. That's excellent. Just making sure, because, well, it's been a year since." "Please don't," I snapped, the words hissing out between gritted teeth. She stiffened, lips pressed into a thin downward line. "Oh, okay." The distance between us thickened, bloated. A mangled corpse of conversation lay in the space we shared. The overhead lights buzzed, filling the silence with artificial static. My gut twisted. Too late, I realized the sharpness in my tone. "Sorry," I offered, voice drained, like I was running on fumes. "It was just, I'd rather not think about it. It was better that way." She gave a small nod. Her face softened, warmth returning to it, and just like that, the room felt a shade brighter. It's all right. I can imagine it was quite a cross to bear. Sometimes I thought the weight of it was much too difficult to uphold, but I kept that part to myself. Eventually, the day dragged itself to a close. We gathered our things, each of us retreating to our cars like tired ants trailing home. On the drive, I caught myself peering into every passing window, searching, still haunted by the image of the man who had stared, unblinking, unsettling, a trespasser lingering in the background of my mind. At every red light, I checked my phone. Nothing. No texts, no pings, not even an emoji from a coworker, just blankness. Strangers again. The light shifted to green. My foot slammed down heavier than I intended. My body moved faster than my mind could course correct. When I arrived, the sky had shifted from dark morning to darker night, the kind of black that felt like a mountain standing between earth and moon. No silver light, no stars, just absence. I stepped inside. The lounge greeted me like an echo chamber. Walls that once bounced with her laughter now trapped me in silence. I was a prisoner here, and yet I returned to my cell every single night. Like a dead satellite, I drifted across the room, crashing down onto the fold-out couch. The TV was already blaring, season 13 of The Ricketts, my favorite sitcom. I could quote the lines before they left the characters' mouths. The crowd laughed where they were supposed to, but I only laughed in the spaces between those awkward beats between laugh tracks. Those were the only moments that got me. The glow of the television danced against the walls, flashing in shifts of color, blue, red, yellow, like a slideshow. Part of it was blocked out by my shadow, my silhouette laughing alone. Then a sharp yelp from Bella. Right. Oh no, how could I forget about you? I whispered. A smile crept across my face, uninvited but welcome. You were her gift to me. I reached down and scratched behind her clipped ear. Poor Bella. Too brave for her own good, always thinking she could take on anything, no matter the size. A jagged scar where her ear ended would never let me forget. I rose from the couch, slow, and walked to the kitchen to feed her. Sometimes I said as she started munching, I don't think I'd make it through another day if it weren't for you. I paused to sniff, building a damn wall to stop the flood of tears from bursting out. I get to say whatever I want, and you don't judge me. You don't understand. Of course, but that wasn't the point, really, was it? I stopped scratching the back of her neck, let my arm hover just above her. I remembered the day she left. She was sitting. I moved my hand to point towards the couch. There, unmoving, unblinking, there was a stillness to her that was almost uncanny. A smile raised my cheeks, though its intent wasn't happiness. My eyes squeezed to slits, tears collected, then spilled. I saw a man today, he also. More tears streaked down to the bottom of my chin, dripped off like a leaking tap, merged into the mat below. Shared the same face she had that night. My jaw opened as if to let out a cry, but it was silent, not wishing to be released. It sounded ridiculous when I said it out loud. I closed my mouth. I hoped I wasn't beginning to lose it, Bella. I chuckled slightly, releasing the tension building in my muscles. That wouldn't be good for either of us, now would it? I chuckled again, but stopped just as quickly. However, saying it aloud felt like confession, and that night Bella was my church. After feeding her and giving her water, I walked toward the bed and placed myself gently into its sheath. I rolled over to her side, empty, cold. The warmth of her body now existed only in memory. I held the pillow closest to me, once hers, clutching it as if memory could turn fabric into flesh. We used to drift off to sleep together like this. Now I just drifted. I got up and went to sleep. The alarm clock rang, dragging me from the subconscious plane. I ascended slowly, delta to theta to alpha. Consciousness took hold. I turned in place. The space beside me was still empty, just as it had been yesterday. I wished I had awakened to find it was all a dream, that I'd been locked in some cruel nightmare, and there was another version of me in another light, still waking up beside her, still seeing the calming look of her face. I ran through my morning routine. I hopped into the shower and immediately twisted away as Arctic water beaded down my back. I lurched out of the glass-encased stall. Did I forget to turn the geyser on? I muttered. I never forgot to do it. I wiped the wet chill from my hair. Looking into the mirror, the stranger stared back. I reached for my comb, only to find it on the right side of the tap, It was always on the left. Strange, I whispered. I don't remember moving it. A moment passed. Then something else broke the morning pattern. The photo of my wife and me at the beach was facing the wrong direction, tilted, almost turned completely around, and the carpet below felt thinner. The thread seemed shorter, a minor detail, but one I couldn't unsee. Driving to work, my foot tapped the brake at each intersection, my body moving on autopilot. I avoided looking at the windows or mirrors, for fear that face would return. The one I'd seen yesterday, the one that wasn't mine. I arrived, greeted the receptionist with the same smile I'd offered yesterday, walked the same path to the kitchen. I opened the cupboard. My cup was there, but off-center. I picked it up and tilted it. Faded remains of someone else's coffee slid down the inside like wax trailing from a burned-out candle. I turned sharply to one of the cleaners nearby. "Excuse me," I asked. "Did someone use my mug this morning?" She scrunched her face like a sponge. "No, not that I'm aware of." I walked off. My heavy footsteps thudded through the silence. Each step landed with a thunderous echo, like I was stomping on the ceiling of another world. I dropped into my seat in front of the computer. My fingers raked through damp hair. The monitor was already on. The keyboard was warm, like someone had just been there. My heart skipped. My palms sweat. Lightning fast, I opened my emails, my messages, socials, everything. Nothing had been touched. All the unopened messages from family were still marked, delivered. Emails, untouched. DMs unread. Everything, still exactly as I'd left it. "Miles, how are you today?" my manager asked, walking in. He mirrored the exact tone and posture from yesterday, like a looping recording. "All right, I guess," I said. My computer was on when I got in. "Huh, that's weird." He paused. "Maybe you just forgot to turn it off. Happens to all of us." "Maybe, but I never forgot to turn it off." "Maybe, I lied." He nodded. "About the items on your board, I need them cleared today." "On it." He nodded again, too many times. "All right, good." Then disappeared behind his wall of screens. As the day continued, I couldn't shake the thoughts. The geyser, the comb, the mug, the computer. It was all off. Slight, yes, but wrong enough that it echoed. I replayed the moments in my head like scenes from a broken film reel, front to back to front. A creeping unease flowered inside me. Something was wrong. More than wrong. Unnatural. It distracted me. Time began to warp. One moment I was typing. The next it was lunch. We were all in the kitchen again. A sea of chatter and chewed pasta. I sat across from a glass-walled meeting room, barely tasting my food. The sounds of me crushing my food down to swallow slowly begin to change, morphing into the mechanical beat of an oxygen machine. That sound. I know it too well. It's carved into my psyche. A memory. The room is silent, save for that soft rhythmic hiss of the oxygen tank. She's asleep or something close to it. Eyes half shut. Mouth slightly open. Her skin looks like old paper, pale and thin. I sit beside her bed, spoon in one hand, bowl of cold broth in the other. "Open up," I whisper, guiding the spoon toward her lips. She turns her head away. I sigh, set the bowl down, pinch the bridge of my nose. Everything aches. My eyes burn. I haven't showered in 3 days, maybe more. "You've got to eat something," I say. "You have to." "I can't." I stop. The nightstand holds a row of pill bottles. Each name feels like a curse. A crumpled medication schedule sits beside them, rewritten so many times I can read my own handwriting anymore. Her breathing fills the room. Shallow, ragged, constant. Even music can't drown it out anymore. "You could at least pretend to try," I mutter, immediately ashamed of how bitter it sounds. She opens one eye, just a sliver. A flicker of recognition, or just a twitch. I don't know anymore. I grab the washcloth from the bowl beside her, wring it out, and gently wipe her forehead. Her skin is cold, damp. She flinches slightly. "You never say thank you," I whisper. Quieter now, not once. I pause. "I took leave from work. Missed Joey's birthday. I sleep on the couch now because your moaning keeps me up. You know that?" No answer. Her eyes are closed again. The noise shifts from the beeps of the oxygen machine back to chewing. I swallow. My plate's empty. I push the chair back, rising to my feet. Beyond the silver bronze-haired woman in the glassed-off meeting room, I see her, a woman staring at me through the glass. My jaw tightened. She didn't blink. I did, but she didn't. Her eyes were unbroken beams, burning into mine. My breath stopped as the shape of her face came into focus. The cheekbones, the lips, the delicate curve of her brows. She looked exactly like my wife. Not similar, not close. Exactly. I rose abruptly. My fork clattered. Pasta spilled to the floor like shredded flesh. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. But I was locked on her face. "Miles, are you okay?" a bronze-haired coworker asked gently, pulling me out of my trance. I crouched, picking up the shattered plate with trembling hands. The cleaner stepped forward. "Don't worry, Miles. I've got it." I looked up at her through the curtain of my hair. "It's my mess. I'll clean it. Why don't you step outside for a second? Get some air." I didn't reply. I just left. Outside, I breathe. 4 in. Hold for 4. 4 out. Hold again. Repeat. My heart rate begins to soften, barely. Then I see him. Across the parking lot, just beyond the fence. A figure, standing still, watching. The outline resolves into a face I remember. The man from yesterday. Frozen. Staring. I begin walking toward him, each step faster than the last. His face comes into focus. Glassy eyes, pale skin, mouth slightly open, unmoving. "Hey," I shout. "Hey, what's your problem, man? Why you watching me, huh?" He doesn't flinch, just stares, hollow, as if waiting for something. "You some sick voyeur? Is that it?" Still no answer, but then his mouth opens and moves. No sound escapes it, but I read his lips clearly. The realization of what he's saying freezes my blood. My heart seems to stop. I stare into the abyss of death itself before the shock surges down from my head to my feet, snapping me back into my body. I turn and sprint toward my car. Co-workers and other staff rush out, yelling after me. "Miles, what's going on?" One of them screams. I don't answer. I climb into my car and slam the gas, tearing through the parking lot and merging onto the main road, leaving the area behind in a blur. I crash through the front door of my house. It's darker inside than out. I flick the light on, flooding the room with harsh brightness. As my eyes adjust, the first thing I see is my couch, flipped upside down, the coffee table with it, everything that was on the table now lying on the floor beneath it, also upside down. My mind, incapable of processing what I'm seeing, begins to twist and turn, trying to bridge some kind of rational thought, but failing. As my eyes drift across the room, I realize everything is upside down, the television perfectly balanced in the air, as if designed to sit that way. The kitchen too, the fridge, the cupboards, even the damn handles, all of it, flipped. I move through the house, grabbing a butcher knife from the kitchen and clutching it so tightly that my knuckles, like the rest of my body, begin turning white. My mind buzzes with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Is someone stalking me? Have I been robbed? I move into my bedroom. The bed is completely rotated. The mattress faces the floor. The blanket is buried beneath it, the frame crushing it even deeper into the wood. I turn every corner cautiously, expecting an armed burglar, a masked invader. With a shaking hand, I reach the cupboard and yank it open. I scream and begin stabbing into the dark interior. But there's no one, just shirts, hanging upside down on their coat hangers. I soften my steps, creeping to the bathroom. Even the toothbrush holder is upside down. The bottles, the soap dish, the razors, gravity defying as if I'm in a dream. I keep closing my eyes, waiting to open them up in the safety of my bed. But it's still there, flipped, mocking me. My phone rings. The sudden noise pierces the silence like a gunshot. I scream, grabbing it. My manager's name glows on the screen. I answer. Hello, Miles, he says, stuttering slightly. Is everything all right? You left so suddenly. Got everyone shaken up. No, I'm not well right now. I just came home and found my whole place flipped upside down. I say, wiping sweat cool and slick like melted ice off my brow, and the tears running like raindrops from my eyes. Shit, he mutters, then lowering his voice. Softer now. Has the place been ransacked? No, strangely, everything is here, but it is all quite literally upside down. That sounds completely absurd. Well, imagine seeing it for yourself. Couldn't if I tried. Look, Miles, why don't you take a few days off? Get yourself right, then come back in next week. I feel you could use it. I understand it's been a year since. I appreciate that, I interrupt quickly. I'll take you up on that. Good, good. We're all thinking of you. We're concerned. Scared of me? More like it, I think, biting my tongue to keep it in. Thank you, I say aloud, ending the call. As the line clicks dead, I hear something. Faint whimpering. Not human. A dog's. Bella. I bolt toward the sound, racing down the hall. I find her under her bed, trembling like she'd seen a ghost. I flip the bed off her and cradle her against me, trying to calm her, whispering into her ears. But then, something strange. My hand passes over her head, then over her ears, then into nothing. I do it again, and again. The clip in her ear. It's not there. I freeze. My heart tightens. That's not my dog. It looks exactly like her, same coat, same collar, but it isn't Bella. Someone replaced her. I drop her. She hits the floor, then sprints out the open front door. Bella, I scream, lunging after her. Bella, I tear through the backyard, flinging the door open with such force it slams into the wall. I scream her name again. Again. No response. I scour the garden. The bushes shed hide in when she was sick. The patch under the stairs. The corner behind the trash bins. Nothing. No trace. I fling open the shed door. Even the shelves inside are upside down. But no Bella. Hours pass. I flip the house back to normal as best I could. The couch had fought me. Everything fought me. But eventually I collapsed into it. Breathless. Broken. Defeated. I scroll through my phone. I comb through every message I've ever gotten, months back. Random requests. Someone asking to borrow a tool. A ride. No threats. No clues. No sign of a stalker. Just normality. Plain. Forgettable conversations. And yet, someone replaced my dog. Why? I drop my phone, bury my face in my hands, fists pressing into my knees. I think I've lost it, I whisper. This is it, the precipice. The line between the sane and the insane, and I'm falling. My mind unhinges from logic, slipping into something darker, something less reasonable. Am I in some kind of simulation? Did someone change the code while I was sleeping? Am I being haunted? A restless spirit? The pale, emotionless man flashes in my mind again. That could explain it, but why? And then I remember his lips, the words he mouthed. And again, like before, my blood freezes. You know what you did. My eyes well up with tears. A cold, painful realization slides in like a blade through the ribs. I turn my head toward the seat next to me, the one my wife had been sitting in. 1 year ago. As I do, I see her, sitting there unmoving, unblinking, staring into space, into the gaps between existence. Next to her, a mug tipped over, contents long gone. I remember you gotten sick, I say quietly. I remember taking care of you. I rest my hand on her cold, bony shoulder. You were impossible. I had to take leave just to be there, but you were never grateful. Her head begins to turn. I couldn't stand being around you, but I had no choice. So I just hurried the sickness along. I had to. I poisoned you. Her mouth opens. A breath escapes, thick and fetid, like the inside of a rotting deer. I close my eyes. The stench vanishes. I open them again. She's gone. The house, flipped right side up. Then a bark. Through the hallway. Bella. I rush to the bathroom, splash cold water on my face. Tears blur my vision. I look up, meeting my own reflection. I run my hands through my hair, brushing it back to see clearly. Every detail of my face, unshrouded. But just for a moment, I swear the reflection lagged behind. That's it for tonight's stories, but the nightmares never end. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new upload. Got a scary experience of your own? Share it in the comments. I just might feature it in a future video. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember some things are scarier than they seem in the dark.